Good morning and welcome to the 2023 Yass Prize Semifinalist Showcase. We're all very excited to have you with us today. Please welcome to the stage Chief Content Officer and Editor at Forbes, Randall Lane.
We have hype music this year. That's great. First, congratulations, everybody. Are people excited? When we, first, heard about this and got behind the Yass Prize team, the idea was so powerful. I mean, you have the for journalists like me, you have the Pulitzer Prizes. If you're a scientist or a peacemaker, you have the Nobel Prizes. But what about disruptive educators? What prize can they look towards for true excellence? You all are here in that room today, and tonight is going to be very exciting. Tonight we're going to celebrate. But today, we're going to learn. We're going to learn from each other. We're going to learn from experts. We're going to learn from the best. So everybody here is already a winner because, A, you're already a winner. You're here in this room. You've made a cut out of, from thousands to hundreds to dozens. So everyone's already a winner. Going through the accelerator, having been down there, it was so inspiring, and the knowledge that was passed on was so exciting. So everyone here is a winner, A, because semifinalists, you're already a winner. B, because you're part of a community that will empower you to continue to be a winner. And you're also a winner because programs like today are going to make you better. And think about the power in this room. And if everybody today gets 10%, or 5% more inspired, one more tactic, smarter. Think about the collective power. How many children are affected if everybody in this world becomes, let's say, 5% better? So maybe that's today is a goal, and when we've done an amazing thing. So everybody here is an incredible disruptor, an out-of-the-box thinker, and it's my real honor and pleasure to introduce, I just called him the big dog here at Forbes. But if you want to talk about somebody who, for decades has been studying disruption, practicing disruption, thinking about it in historical context, and really being a true beacon in terms of thinking about things differently and how we use, the power of capitalism to create great change. And you guys, there's no greater change than what you guys represent, which is the future of our country, which is literally the future of our country, which are the people. We have, the chairman, editor-in-chief, and great sage of Forbes, Mr. Steve Forbes.
Well, thank you very much, Randall, for those very kind remarks. Thank all of you for joining us today. It's a very exciting day. I guess they feel I'm going to fall over. But even though it's young in the day, maybe coffee makes you whatever. Another subject for another time. But it is great fun to be hosting again for the third time a partnership between Yass and Forbes. What, as Randall said, is absolutely true. And the need for what you are doing is never more apparent. As you know, these global tests. Students take tests. In the latest round, the United States ranked 18th in the world in overall achievement, even though we spend more money than any other nation in the world, perhaps several put together. The lockdowns, as you know, exposed how poorly millions of our children have been educated, put it right out there for the public to see. And these children come from very disadvantaged, many of them disadvantaged backgrounds, so the people who have the least are hurt the most. And that's what the whole Yass Prize is about, making sure everyone has a real opportunity to get a real education. This is a moral scandal, what's happened with our schools, but it also is even more than that, because when they are deprived of an education, all of us lose. All of us lose. We're all in this together. Tom Sowell, the great economist, asked the question, what is the difference between us today and people in the Stone Age? Same human body, same appetite, same planet, same atmosphere. The difference is we know more. We have more information. We have more knowledge. That is the difference. Even if you have natural disasters, the thing is, if knowledge is not destroyed, you can quickly recover from wars, disasters. You saw it after World War II. tens of millions of people killed, massive physical devastation, and people thought it would be generations before there'd be a full recovery. But within a handful of years, economic output in Japan and Western Europe exceeded pre-war levels. Why? Because knowledge was not destroyed. And it's not just knowledge, what you get in school, but it's also constant knowledge. New knowledge comes from experimentation. And that's one of the exciting things that come out of this prize and the innovation that you represent, is that education is a lifetime pursuit. And by ensuring that it's not something drudge that people dread, you create people who are going to be a benefit to themselves and to the world for generations to come. So by hurting their prospects, we hurt all of our prospects. So their success is our success. And so in terms of looking to the future, I think you, as Randall said, you represent the future. So we're talking about the opportunity for them to realize their interests and their passions, but also, and this is very important, education is not just about learning facts. It's also arousing curiosity. It's also about getting the self-discipline and the self-confidence to move ahead instead of being crippled emotionally because of what happened or didn't happen in the schools. So by giving people the discipline and the confidence to pursue their passions, all of us come out ahead. Just one example among billions is a fellow named Norman Borlaug, father of the Green Revolution. He had an interest in forestry, agronomy, and got interested in how you get better crop outputs. But it took, so he took current knowledge, but then with teams in Mexico and elsewhere, pursued how to create better crops, more durable crops that could survive the various diseases. Ultimately, they went through 2,000 different varieties in Mexico, but they succeeded, turning Mexico from a grain importer to a grain exporter. Then they went to India and Pakistan, did the same thing in doubling, tripling output. And he's credited, that's why he got the Nobel Peace Prize, with saved from starvation over 1 billion people. But it was that constant seeking of knowledge, the basis of the knowledge, the self-confidence, the discipline, and the pursuit of it. What my grandfather called stick-to-itiveness. That's a critical thing in terms of enabling people to get ahead. So one of the nice things about the Yass Prize and what Janine and her team have done is that they want to personalize education. You've heard a lot about personalizing healthcare, where a medicine that may work for you may not work for you. But so we find out what works for each person. You may have a nice school in your neighborhood, but it may not be right for your child at that particular point in that child's life. So we have education serve everyone, not one size fits all. So the innovation is constant. And this is what Janine and her team are so excited about. And she and her team and what you represent is what Alexis de Tocqueville, French aristocrat who visited this country back in the 1830s, wrote a book about it called The American Democracy. It's still around in some schools today where they still read. And one of the things that he absolutely, and by the way, he's one of those people that everyone loves to quote, but they never read his book. But anyway, but Tocqueville, one of the things that absolutely astounded Tocqueville was what he called voluntary associations, people voluntarily coming together for a shared purpose, whether it's for a problem, an opportunity, or just sports or whatever. Hundreds and thousands of these people, organizations, people coming together. And he said that's what trains people to be citizens of a functioning republic. This constant. What made him so amazed was that in Europe, with their medieval background, you waited for permission. You waited to be told what to do. Here, you just went out and did it. So for years, Janine has seen what our schools were not doing and determined to do something about it. Over 25 years, back when she was in kindergarten. Little suck-up isn't not bad. But anyway, so for 25 years, she has supported outstanding schools. She helped found a charter school in West Philadelphia. She was a founding board member of the Philadelphia School Partnership. And so during the pandemic, she launched the Yass Foundation, which again exemplifies what de Tocqueville saw, that people seeing an opportunity, seeing a problem, and doing something about it. And the key thing is about the Yass Prize is it shows you as innovators are not alone. You can talk to one another, learn from one another. And so it is a growing movement because you're not isolated. You're not doing something bad because it's out of the mainstream. You're creating the new mainstream of a quality education for everyone. So with that, let me turn it over to a person that Tocqueville would admire, and we all admire her today, Janine Yass, pioneer, and thank you very, very much.
You're way too kind. Thank you.
Hardly.
Thank you. Well, welcome to everyone here to New York at Christmas, the best time of year to be here. And thank you so much. I know it's probably not the perfect time to plan to get away from your families 2 weeks before the holidays. I can't be home wrapping presents this year, but I know all you guys should be. So thanks for making the effort to be here today. It's great to be back at Forbes on 5th again. It does sort of feel like our holiday reunion. Like I said, for those of you who are not used to New York at this time, you don't realize how blessed we are with this weather and this day. We haven't had this every year. And I also love looking out at all these 33 new faces this year who, all of you don't know this right now, but you're about to become my best friends for the next year. I can't wait. There's never been a more important time in the world, in history, than today to do the work that you guys are all doing. Your passion, your dedication to the next generation of leaders, families, workers. What you're going to create is going to be a safer, better, and hopefully more peaceful world than we have today. Jeff and I are so inspired by all your stories, the work you do, why you do it, and we are so honored to be able to support your work. So I know I'm excited for tonight. I know all you guys must be to be at the New York Hilton, decorated for Christmas. And I want you to know that in my eyes, all 33 of you really are already winners. You are, I'm going to dub the 1% of our 2,700 applications that we had this year. So consider yourselves in that league and just be honored that, we're so honored to already have you here at this level. I can't wait to work with you in the future. I can't wait for you to work together and for you to work with our amazing alumni. So without further ado, let's get the program started.
Please welcome to the stage the moderator for our first panel, Taylor Shedd, founder of Stemuli.
Thank you. Is everybody excited? Yes. You are the nation's best education innovators. Let's celebrate. Come on. On our first panel today, we will be talking about how these innovators are using macro, micro, and digital learning approaches to transform teaching and learning for the future of work and to ensure that our kids are getting the best education. Traditionally, technology has gotten into the hands of the haves first, and years later, if it ever does, it eventually gets to the have-nots. What strikes me about you as a group is you're all working to increase accessibility and equity in education through the use of technology. So the first question I have for you all is, how are each of you transforming the future of teaching and learning? And I want to start with Amy.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you, Taylor, and thank you, Janine. Gosh, I think so many of us are thinking about this on a daily basis, but I'd say how we're at ASU Prep Global, where I get a chance to represent increasing access and transforming teaching and learning, is about smaller learning environments with unbundled assets to have more deeply personalized opportunities for students. Allowing kids to have access the minute they need it instead of waiting for them on the conveyor belt of a tight structure to get to the place where they're allowed to by grade or by whatever that said rule is within school. So it's kind of blowing up the structure. One of the things I would note is I think some of the innovations that come out are at the top, and what we're really trying to do, meaning in whatever school format, structure, district, we're really trying to get the innovations to the student, and in order to do that, we have to keep the best talent closest to the student and have every one of these said assets kind of orbiting around the child, as opposed to these blocks, these gates that we keep seeing when some of these innovations come out with rules at the top. So creating micro schools, micro learning environments where kids have access to the best teaching talent that become more like coaches and Sherpas, and as opposed to being the gatekeepers of knowledge, and giving the access to the students so that they can run, as opposed to being on this kind of slow walk that we often have within education, and allowing them to sprint and run through walls.
So what impact have you seen on student engagement with your approach?
When you put kids in the driver's seat, they light up in new ways. So I think when the expectation for us to have, in the box standard approaches for a classroom of 35 kids, as opposed to projects that they create, that they generate, the engagement it's 180 degree difference. They light up. When you're attaching what their interests are to college and career, when the classroom is modern, even aesthetically, when it's something that they enjoy, an environment that both represents their, we're the alpha generation who we're raising up is, it needs to look different, feel different. So when we're designing these small models, because it's thousands and thousands of small models where kids are not floating around anonymously. We want them to be autonomous. Then we give them the assets that they need. They have the access, they're in the driver's seat, and then they light up.
That's amazing, thank you. Erica, I'm gonna go to you. Talk about how you're transforming the future of teaching and learning.
Well, at Optima Academy Online, as the world's first virtual reality school, we are transforming it in a number of ways. The first way is just going beyond the four walls of the classroom, the four walls of someone's home if they're schooling from home, and providing access to the highest quality teachers from all over the country to students no matter where they are, and doing that tuition free. So we've created a program where not only are we using 3 dimensions to bring a true classroom experience, a social distance learning experience to students no matter where they live, no matter their zip code or their income. We've also, on the backside of that, kind of hacked the government funding as much as possible to allow those families to access this program, which we believe is the highest quality of curriculum, providing knowledge and virtue and a rigorous accredited curriculum. They can access that tuition free with our help through charters, through ESAs, and other forms of government funding that are now coming out. So we're following what governments are doing and as far as policy coming through, and targeting the ways that we can provide access to the highest number of students and give them that virtual reality experience. So not only can they experience a classroom environment with other students and other teachers from all over the country, they can also experience a classroom in ancient Rome or on the moon through the virtual reality experience. The other key part is what we're doing for teachers. We are really leading the country in professional development in 3 dimensions and in the era of spatial computing. We're training teachers in traditional classrooms on how to use virtual reality in their classrooms on top of whatever curriculum that they're using, as well as we are able to hire the best teachers who want to teach virtually. We have about 100 applications for every 1 spot that we have. And that allows teachers the flexibility to teach in VR. We're training them to do so, and also provides that high quality talent to places that otherwise would not have access to that quality of teacher.
That's amazing. I had a follow-up question for you, but you already nailed it. So
Thank you.
we're going to go to Steve. Talk to us about how you're also using VR to transform what learning looks like.
Thank you, Taylor. Victory XR is that place where online learning intersects with hands-on learning. So think about that. If you have a chemistry lab, you can't do that through Zoom, but through the power of virtual reality in our platform, students can pick up a test tube. They can handle expensive chemicals, and if they drop it and break it, or maybe they blow something up, we just start over, no problem. And the value of that really is that if you build your own advanced chemistry lab, it might cost $300,000 or more. But with this solution, $15,000, just a small fraction of the cost, which makes it available now to students and schools everywhere.
That's great. Dr. Griffin?
Yes. I have to start with Taylor first. That's a great question. And I have to start with what we're not doing at Leaders to Legends. What we are not doing, and not a part of our learning platform with teaching and learning, is testing students with technology. That's one thing that for many years, being in education over 3 decades now, I have seen technology used in the inappropriate formats. And so I had to start the answer with what we're not doing. But what we are doing with technology, we actually are in a marginalized community, is where Leaders to Legends is based. Part-time we're on site, other times children are in their home, all in the same community. In that community, the infrastructure is not the greatest, and so technology continues to be something that we would love to see. I will say, looking at Stimuli Ed and the metaverse and what it has to offer, oh my goodness, I couldn't do anything but dream seeing that, so thank you for offering that to the many students that you do as well. We do use technology as hands-on, as you were sharing. Everything that we do, technology has to be a use. For example, our high school students, our teens, who would pick up their phones and they knew it traditionally as a social thing, that I just used my phone to socialize. It has now turned into, this is a research tool. This is a way to make money. This is a way to, and that's because it's being modeled for them, and that is a part of our curriculum at Leaders to Legends.
That's phenomenal. All right, Mindy.
At On Your Mark, we teach children how to read. That doesn't sound super innovative, right? That's something our schools are supposed to have been doing for decades now, ever since the inception of public school in this country. Yet we find ourselves in a position where only 1/3 of students across the country are reading on grade level by the pivotal year of 3rd grade, which matters tremendously for their life outcomes. So what we're doing at On Your Mark is we are supporting schools in their quest to be able to teach children to read by connecting our tutors virtually to kids in their classrooms. I have a background as an educator, principal, and in teacher prep, and we have put so much pressure on a single teacher in a classroom of 25 to 30 kids to be able to meet the needs of all those individual students, and it hasn't been working that way. And so we train our tutors to be able to make sure they are meeting a child right where they are and that they are able to deliver them the reading lessons that they need in order to accelerate their early reading journeys. And that's how we're innovating right now.
Excellent. So I want to transition to talk about the program that you guys just went through, the accelerator and the community that you've built. So when I went through the accelerator, I had no idea what a micro school was. And I soon and quickly thereafter learned. I want to know from you all, what is the biggest aha moment you've had since joining the Yass Prize community, and how are you going to use that aha moment to transform your work? Let's start with Steve.
Well, thanks for that, Taylor. I would say I felt like I came into this knowing a lot about education because of my background as chair of the education committee in the legislature. So I met and talked with a lot of people in the education industry. But what I learned here is that there are so many different approaches that can work that they just need one ingredient, and that is the freedom and the resources to actually give it a try. And in every other facet of American culture, that's largely what happens, but that's not what has happened in education. And so to me, I've just been listening to the stories of the various participants. I just shake my head and say, this is finally what we needed and what I worked for many years ago, and now we're seeing it actually happen.
Great. Mindy, I'm going to throw the question to you.
Yeah, Steve, you just made me think about looking out in this group of these amazing colleagues that I've had a chance to meet and collaborate with over the last couple months. And I have just really been inspired by how there is power in collective work. And that when we are all here from different angles to really address the same problems together is when we're going to really be able to move the needle for kids, not when we are all working in an isolated fashion out on islands. So I'm really excited to be able to take that away with me from this experience.
Great. Erica?
I completely agree with Mindy on that. And what I was struck by, because in our company, we've always known we wanted to scale. We know that our mission is to make this available to as many families as possible, and a lot of our decision making has been towards that. And you look at all these amazing programs from Cleveland to Miami, and some of them are very personalized. But with just some problem solving and some tweaking, some thought processes, they are able to figure out a way to scale some really creative and personalized education experiences. And so I've just learned to think of things a little bit differently. You know, scalability, we kind of think in a certain way, but I love what the Yasses have done in bringing the experts in to help all types of programs that seem very local and very specific to think about ways that they can actually replicate the amazing work that they're doing in other communities.
Excellent. Dr. Griffin?
Yes, I would say coming into, as a part of the virtual accelerator for Yass Prize, the social networking, I felt pretty good about that. The technology, it really opened my eyes to what technology can really do in education. The efficiency that can take place with technology, and so I'm really looking forward to tapping into more of that. And I do, but there's a balance. I also, in the back of my mind, always have Roger Love saying, oh my goodness, there's a balance. They have to have the people skills to be able to interact and push things forward as we change the world in education.
Great. Amy?
So I think less than an aha, more of just feeling this rejuvenated excitement that I have personally about education and being in a room with others that are energized like this. And even though there's a bunch of us, we really are unique and there's not enough of us. And so the opportunity to be in this platform, it's insane. I mean, it's a quiet revolution that needs more noise, and we're getting it because of our leaders and because of the funding. And to be around this type of energy, and all of us are doing something different and unique and contextual for our communities. Increasing access with keeping the same ridiculously high expectations, but in unique programmatic ways. And to be in a room and to listen to what each of our competitors, colleagues, friends, collaborators are doing, I go back as an operator. And I feel like I'm happy about the future. Like, for this type of environment to begin to get this type of momentum is powerful. And at ASU Prep Global, we're trying to empower parents and entrepreneurs to start fellowships of microschools and help give them the assets that they need. And there's been 2 different times where schools have reached out to us because of this and said, I don't know exactly what you're doing, but I know you're part of this Yass Prize, and we want access to that. And so what a powerful thing that is, and I get to smile at my colleagues and friends for what they're doing in a very unique way, so it gets me all jazzed up.
Great. So we've got a few minutes left, and I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to leave us with some last words. So I'm going to categorize it. You can either give a shout out and some love to your fellow community members. You can talk about the next big thing in education and where you're predicting and we'll go with technology. Or you can leave us with some tidbits on how school districts can ensure, or schools can ensure that kids are getting equitable access to technology. So you got 3 options. We're going to start down with you, Mindy, and work our way this way.
Well, that was a zinger at the end. To just,
yeah, it is.
That's cool off the top of my head. My background is in schools. It's in classrooms. It's as a principal. And to be able to reconnect with folks who are doing the hard work day to day of running schools and continually innovating to try to do what's best for your kids is incredibly inspirational. So I can't name everybody who is represented in that space in this room, but just know you all have left me inspired to build a better program that is going to be flexible to meet the needs of schools like yours as well. So thank you so much to all the folks who are really on the front lines working with kids and schools on the day-to-day.
Thank you. Dr. Griffin?
I say to all those that are watching, nobody said it would be easy. However, if things are not working for your child, it is your God-given authority to do something about it. And you have plenty of people in this room and space across the country who are supporting you and doing that. So do something about it.
Great.
120 years ago, there was a moment when innovation in automobile creation was taking over, and it had its moment. Then came aviation, and then came computers and chips and the internet. This is our moment. This is the moment for innovation in education. You know, a lot of us have been doing this for a lot of years, and there was dramatically more resistance from the established institutions. And while that resistance still exists, we finally have hit that moment when you can innovate and find acceptance and find the resources. And so my encouragement, not just to the people in the room who are already innovating, but to anybody that hears this or is watching, take your chance, take your moment, because this is it.
Great.
I'm going to take two a little bit combined, because I really don't think that there's much that the monopoly can do to fix itself and to provide the quality and the access that our children deserve. The only thing that can truly do that, and it's been talked about many times in this program, is a free market in education, where parents are free to access the education that they think is going to work best for their children, permissionless, if you will, in a permissionless way. And districts cannot break themselves of being a monopoly. Policy has to do that. We're seeing that occur so that families can access really excellent options like what has been represented here. And I hate to even just pick some out, because I could go down the list of all 33 and tell you what I love about that. But let's look at Burbella, the micro schools that are using empty mall space and Foot Lockers that are, you know, they're gonna fall. And I love what she said in her pitch. I'm taking over the whole mall soon. I won't forget that. And Comp Sci High, which I had never heard anyone talk about the end goal of economic freedom and working backwards from that. We all should be in that mindset. So that was extremely inspiring to me. And on your mark tutoring, I thought was excellent. You see so much tutoring out there for the older grades when it's frankly too little too late. We get sixth graders who can't read, and we are trying to remediate them. So the fact that they're focused on those lower grades and the reading, parents should be able to access that option as well when things are not working out in those early grades. So I'm really pitching for that freedom and the ability to access all of these options for parents through policy, not necessarily through the existing system.
Excellent.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that we are really in a renaissance of opportunity. You know, the advent of AI is, you know, messing us all up in a good way. And I think all of us have gotten here because we are the type that ask for forgiveness instead of permission often. And if it's in the name of a student, and if the student is always at the center of every decision that we make, it's for good. And so that's when I look around at these models, and we stay student-centered, and it can be everything from just tutoring to professional development to some pretty crazy technology that who thought this was going to be in the hands of a second grader. This is the type of collaborative group that is starting a national movement, an international movement that I'm proud to be a part of. And we're thinking about it in a way that kind of coalesces the modern technology that's emerging so quickly on behalf of our kids. I think we, as the adults, kind of have to be a bit of the shield, the translators, so that we can, technology for good, principled innovation. And so as I have been, the privilege of being a part of this accelerator is watching those innovators do it with principle and in the name of students. And so that's all kind of goes back to that quiet revolution where we just keep getting louder.
So our panel is pretty much over, but I want you guys to know that you are valued, you're seen, and your work is not small. It's significant. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage the moderator for our second panel, Pat Brantley, CEO of Friendship Charter Schools.
Well, hello, everyone. It is my privilege to introduce our panel, The Role of Parent Power and Permissionless Education. Because without parents, we wouldn't have the children, and we wouldn't have the education that our children need. There are vast differences in states that truly give parents power and allow them to choose the education environments that are best for their children. We can see those differences in outcomes, in children's well-being. We can see it across the country. Yet we hear platitudes. Those platitudes are, the parents are the first teacher. We want parents to come out and be engaged. But there are very few systems across this country that really elevate parent power. So that's what we're going to talk about today. As you know, I'm Pat Brantley. I am the proud CEO of Friendship Public Charter School, where we educate 5,000 children and support their families in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. And so parents mean a lot to me because they are what made our schools possible over 25 years ago. But we were told when we went to start those schools that families didn't want choice. They didn't want options. They didn't need us. And on the first day when we opened with 1,200 families, there were 1,000 more who sat on our waiting list that didn't have a chance. So I want to start with Brennea Fairchild, the founder of Melanin Village. Brennea has been an educator, managed operations for a charter management organization, founded a tutoring company, and now is making homeschool possible for families across the nation. Brennea, what does parent power mean to you?
It's a great question. So glad to be here. I think exactly what you said. When you think about the platitudes, parents are, children's first teachers. Parent power really means treating parents as if that's true, right? Coming alongside parents as partners and experts who know things about their children, about their children's experiences and likes and dislikes and what works for them, that in a typical maybe education setting, you wouldn't be able to see or know or be privy to as a classroom teacher. So it really is that idea of how can we take parents and say, hey, you have wisdom, you have knowledge that I don't have, and I want to be able to involve that, right? Wrap that into your child's learning experience. And so one of the ways that we do that in the village is I always say we both empower and equip parents with the tools so that they can provide a world-class education at home, right? Because I think parents, this narrative of parents have to go to the teachers for permission is where our society is right now. And so we're empowering parents to be like, no, you can do this. You really are. My favorite phrase is, you're uniquely equipped to homeschool your child. You are uniquely equipped to educate your child. And it's not my bias, it's research, right? Research looks at the impact of student-teacher relationships and how they impact academic achievement and academic outcomes. And there's no relationship that's more powerful than the one that a child has with their parents, right? And so how can we look at parents as those partners that have that wisdom, that key to success in their children's lives, and wrap them in that way. And I will say, you see a very big difference between states that are empowering parents to do this and those that are not. So the Melanin Village is a national organization. So we serve families where school choice is, universal in places like Arizona, and then other places where it's not, like in New Jersey or in North Carolina. And we see the difference in terms of parent frustration and parent engagement and what they feel like they can and cannot do when there's that access to choice. So it's really treating parents as if they are those partners and are those fountains of wisdom about the children.
Thank you, Brennea. Colleen Dipple, Families Empowered. So first, Colleen, I love your organization. I love this idea of the work that you do to ensure that parents and guardians have information on what their local school choices are and how they can access them to make the best decisions for their children. And I'm going to have to read this because I've heard you say, it is stunning that community leaders and elected officials are not listening to the people who elected them and to their constituents and offering more choice. Can you say more about that? Why should elected officials listen? And what does true listening look like?
Sure. So thank you for this question. And I just want to say I'm really grateful that we're focusing in a very real way on parents, because parents are the deciders. They are the taxpayers, and they know and love their children best. And so we, bet the farm on parents. And so, one, why should elected officials listen to them? Because, parents elected them. It's their job, right, to listen to parents. And at Families Empowered, we've served families and helped parents decide will find and then apply to schools or schooling options that are best for their children, and we listen to them without judgment. We believe them. We trust that they are able to make good decisions. And so in my state, I found in Families Empowered in Texas, we do not have universal school choice. Yet we're serving hundreds of thousands of families who want it. That tension is real, and I think for elected officials who choose to ignore parents and to disregard what parents want, I think they will find that they are on the losing end of, at some point, an electoral situation. And they're actually just making, they're making a bad bet, right? We can bet on parents. We can trust parents, and we should give parents the high quality, individualized schooling options they want. And if elected officials choose not to listen to parents, we cannot put this genie back in the bottle. I predict it will not work out well for elected officials who choose to disregard tax-paying parents.
Thank you. David Noah, Comp Sci High. You've been a teacher, a lawyer, and now you're the founder of a school that's in the top 2% of New York State, which is completely impressive. So I have to ask, is parental choice really important to having great schools? What do you say to the people that say, listen, the professional educators know best, and parents need to step back and let them deliver good schools?
It's a great question, Pat. I think the first thing I'd say to those people is, where do you work? Because I doubt you run a good school. So I'll say three things about that. I think the first is, like, when we started our school, the first thing we did before we opened our doors was actually parent focus groups and student focus groups in the community. Because, like, yes, of course, I'm a professional educator, and I have lots of ideas about what works, but the truth of the matter is, like, who do schools serve, right? I mean, we just heard from Benet, we just heard from Colleen, like, who do schools serve? They serve the kids and the families. And so you have to start there and then move on. So yes, Comp Sci High our mission is focused on economic freedom, but why? Because we are in a community that doesn't have it. And so that was the first inspiration for our mission as a school. So that's the first thing is, like, where do you work? Probably not a great school. Second thing I'd say to those people who said, well, does parent power really matter? Like, I'd say, see what happens if you ignore parents. I think when people say, well, parents are very disengaged at my school, I'd say, well, wouldn't you be disengaged if you were trying to talk to someone for 10 years and they weren't listening? Like, of course you'd be disengaged because you'd understand the energy you were getting. But, like, go ahead and ask a parent's advice and watch how quickly that relationship changes. My favorite advice to give to teachers and school leaders is, like, they're like, well, what do I do with this parent? I said, ask their advice. If you want to know what to do with a parent, ask their advice and really listen, and you will learn a lot about the kid. You will learn a lot about how our school could be better, and you will learn a lot about how you could do your job better. And so I think the third thing is, like, if schools are not divorced from their communities. And so if you want to understand the community you're in, even if you yourself are from that community, you have to understand the texture and the entire community you serve. And that means getting out and talking to children and families so you understand the homes that the children are coming from that you are serving, so you understand what it means to serve them. And if you haven't done those things, then you're not actually educating your students, is what I would say.
Thank you. And Joe Connor, founder of Odyssey. I love both the idea and the reality of Odyssey, a company that's at the intersection of education, government, and technology, and really using that to empower families. So how are you helping families to have power?
Yeah, great question. The way that we do it is Odyssey helps states easily manage and administer school choice programs. And our major focus is on making the programs accessible for parents. So typically when school choice programs pass, there's two phases of them, right? There's the legislative part. We work solely on the second part, which is implementation. And I think a big part of realizing the full promise of school choice programs is making sure that they're implemented in a way that is very easy for parents to use. And so when I started the company 3 years ago, there were only 4 ESAs at the time. One of them was actually held up in court, so there were only really 3. And the very first thing that I did was spend 6 months traveling to places like Arizona, to Florida, and actually talking to parents there and saying, hey, you know, you're on this program, tell me what's good about it, what doesn't work. And we quickly identified that there was a major blocking point for parents being able to quickly sign up, get approved, and access funds. And so one of the things that we rolled out for the first time in the country at Odyssey was real-time digital identity verification. And so in Iowa, where we currently administer the Students First ESA program, over 30,000 parents applied for the program, and they were all able to find out their determination, whether or not they're approved for the program, very quickly, in most cases under 1 second. And so that means that we're really beating kind of what to date has been a very slow industry standard of about 30, 60, in some cases 90 days, and making sure that these parents are able to easily access them and use them. Because I think these programs are really only as good as how popular they are with parents and how easy they are to sign up. And so a lot of what we spend our time doing, and I think it actually dovetails a lot with everyone else in this panel, is making sure that these programs are very simple and easy for parents to sign up. And I can't really emphasize how important that is to these programs in every state nationwide.
Thank you. You know, I often think about the work that we do with parents, and it's one individual parent, and we talk to them about using their voice with their school. But then we hear stories about tens of thousands of families that are sitting on waiting lists that can't get their choice. And so I'd love your advice, whether it's for the individual or the collective, but what is your advice to parents about building and leveraging their power? And why don't we start with you, Vernea?
I really appreciate this question because even as I said in the village, you know, we empower and equip parents. The word empower isn't necessarily the best one because you already have the power. Right? Like, it's not like I need to give it to you, which is what empowerment suggests. Like, you have the power. You are the taxpayer. You are the voter, right? You are the one who decides what your child does and where they are and where they go. Like, you already have the power. And so I think it's sometimes just kind of inspiring people to activate their power. And they're being advocates like us that are saying, hey, you know, the school isn't doing what you need them to do, or this teacher doesn't seem to be a good fit or isn't listening. Okay, you can elevate that concern. You can write to this person. You can do that thing. And so first, I'd say just to all of us and those that are watching that anytime you hear a parent that might be struggling, or if you yourself are a parent struggling, just look for allies. Look for others that would say, hey, I hear you, I believe you, and let's work with what you're saying versus trying to convince you what's going on with your baby isn't really going on. So that's number one. And then secondly, I would say something that just through this experience and so many conversations I've been having is like, don't be afraid for it to be a little bit messy. I think sometimes when we need to get what we need, our voices might have to raise, right? We might have to ask a little bit louder, and sometimes that feels uncomfortable. But being willing to show up at the meetings, to vote in a way that makes sense, that advocates for what your family needs. I think I would also empower parents to do that. Those are things we could start doing today to make a difference.
Thank you. Colleen?
So I think that this is a really good question, because when I first founded Families Empowered, we had thought we were going to create this advocacy organization. And actually Howard Fuller, who is a real mentor and someone I deeply respect, looked at me and he said, well, it's really great that you want to organize parents, but have you asked them what they want? And literally it was like a bulb went off, right? Because again, getting back to your earlier question, and I will answer this, but there's no other business or industry that ignores the consumer except this one, right? So we need to listen to parents, and then we need to make it very easy for parents' voices to be heard in a way that respects where they are and what is happening for them. So at Families Empowered, we are trying to elevate parent voices. We haven't done it very, very well, but we're excited. We're going to use some of our Yass Prize to do that. And for some families, I mean, we, this fall, had a very important vote. We did pass-through calls, which we've never done before. We just stood it up through our call center, and we called parents and said, hey, would you like $8,000 to spend on your kid? And they said, yeah. We said, would you please tell your legislator, we can pass you through today. That's C3 permissible. We used our infrastructure to do that, and it didn't require taking days off work and marching. So I think really recognizing how important parents are, but then figuring out ways to meet them where they are so they can be engaged is very, very important. And it's a different way of looking at parents.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I'll just double down on what Colleen said. I think, and as a school, I think we have an obligation. Like the advice to parents is turn up the heat on legislators, but like that's not always aligned to like what they have time for or what they're interested in doing. And so I think we have an obligation as schools to actually turn up the heat on ourselves by giving parents easier access, lowering the barriers to entry, and saying like, hey, come to the school this morning, grab breakfast, and like we're going to make sure that our local politician is there, and you tell them whatever you want to tell them, including how we need to do better. And if we want to do that as schools, then I think we can lower the barrier to entry for parents in terms of their ability to access and make their voices heard.
Thank you.
And I would just add, I think that all of that, everything that the panelists have said is great. I would add that really it's about kind of coalition building, and people think about that in a very formal way, but it's kind of what all of those groups together can achieve. And so states are responsive if enough people do raise their voices, and we've seen that because we've been, in numerous states across the country now. And so talking to people in the governor's office, talking to state reps, state senators, state agencies that might be tasked with carrying it out, people do listen to parents. They do listen also to schools. I actually just really want to echo that. That's probably something I wouldn't have known 3 years ago before I started the company. But the fact that schools are kind of speaking for a certain community, right, gives them a power which sometimes parents lack. And so actually the most successful campaigns that we've seen really include both parents as well as schools, school networks, and those are kind of the most fruitful.
Thank you. So there you have it, America. Parent power is the route to great schools that honor the potential of every child. And so what I'd love to say to any parent that's listening is this: demand information, get the data, raise your voice, join with others, but always make the decision that is best for your child, because you are the only one that can. Thank you, panelists.
Please welcome to the stage the moderator for our third panel, Kanisha Skaggs, founder and director of SOAR Academy.
Good afternoon, you all. Thank you for being here with us. We have here 5 very deserving Yass Prize semifinalists, and I'd love for them to kind of each just tell you what stands out about their program. So we'd love to start with you, sir, and tell us what you do and why you do it to help our young men succeed in school.
Yes, so my name is Anthony Brock. I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. I am proud to say I was actually born an educator. I come from a long line of educators and rooted right in the middle of the civil rights movement in Montgomery, Alabama. My father's a minister, was a minister. My father was a principal as well. Mother's a teacher, so I was brought up to always give back to my community. So in Montgomery, Alabama, right now, we started in 2015, but in 2023, we're educating 210 amazing young men who just showed me that they're watching back home in Montgomery, so shout out to the fellas back in Montgomery.
Thank you. And I want to quickly say that you all were donated a church for your school, right?
Absolutely.
Right, from the Methodist Church Fund. How were you all able to obtain that building?
Yes, so in 2015, we were looking for a home. I had 30 young men at that time who were eager and ready to come to the school. Their parents were ready, but we did not have a location. And so the Methodist Church in the state of Alabama, they allowed us to do a lease to purchase offer on the church that sits right across from Dexter Avenue and right down the street from where Rosa Parks got on the bus. So we're just blessed to be in that area. But now we have purchased the building, and it's a huge space. So we have our 6th through 8th grade young men in that building, but we also have another school, a high school that's right around the street.
And you guys are transforming the lives of men, young men only, because that's an area that's needing special attention. Is that right?
Absolutely. Our young men, not just in Montgomery, but our young men across America, they're behind right now in so many different areas.
Yes.
And we've created an environment where they are celebrated, not just tolerated. They're amazing young people, and we have a staff that really believes in them. We tell them we love them all the time, but we don't just tell them, we show them as well. So that's very important.
I love that. Thank you. Cornell, you're with Brothers Liberating Our Communities. Tell us a little bit about how you all are ensuring that more young men are successful. What does your program offer?
Hi, everybody. My name is Cornell Ellis. She said I'm the founder and executive director of Block, Brothers Liberating Our Communities. We work to ensure that every student in America has access to a black male educator. Yeah, every student in America should have access to a black male educator. Less than 2% of educators in America are black men, and one black teacher in the life of a black student increased their chances of graduating from high school by over 30%. So when we talk about increasing, sustaining, and retaining black male educators in schools, we know that we're creating a self-sustaining system, a diverse pipeline of educators. With more black male educators, we have higher achievement, higher and more positive experiences for young black boys, which means that they're more likely to return to education as teachers. We are creating a cycle that makes us instead of the cycles that we're used to that break us. So at Block, we believe that creating that self-sustaining ecosystem, starting with the black male educators, is where we think the work really starts.
So Cornell, one thing I want to note just quickly is that you all actually use Nas's album, which is a hip hop album, to connect with male educators. And I think that's a way of saying that we get where you are, we get where you're from, we're on your level. Tell us about using that album to help the teachers kind of connect to your program.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tony Simmons is in the house, the hip hop educator. He's will be remiss not to mention him and his work and thinking about the way that hip hop relates to students. The same thing goes into place for our black male educators. And oftentimes when we look at albums like The King's Disease, which is reference to older kings and getting older and having to adjust and change and evolve, as if you know, Nas is from New York City. He's been a rapper for over 40 years, right? Can't just rap about the same things he was rapping about when he was 20. And so the album, his 17th album that just came out, was almost a pinnacle of what it means to be an older, experienced black male in the community. So we used several tracks from that list, several tracks from Kendrick Lamar's album, to create thematic similarities from the challenges that our black male educators have in schools to the challenges that we're seeing in the themes in the songs. And it truly does create professional development that's more relevant in the same way that we see relevant curriculum and relevant pedagogy. In the same way we're talking about individualized work for students, we should also have individualized learning for teachers.
I like that.
And when teachers are able to get development that truly pours into them and sustains them and keeps them in the work.
So I love it. So the pedagogy that you all use to develop leadership with your teachers is hip hop based, and they can connect to that more. It's more relevant to what they experience. I love that. Thank you. Next, Hans, I'd love to talk to you because I know that in your LinkedIn profile, it says you want to be an ancestor worth remembering. How are you doing that in your community for young black men? And for any young men, not specifically. How are you doing that, your program?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm from Harlem, right? If anybody was expecting a Mississippi accent, speak to my colleagues back there, Kamora and Alicia. But I'm from Harlem, spent over half a century in Harlem, and I'm down in the Mississippi Delta right now. And, you know, the Mississippi Delta is defined by slavery, sharecropping, a 1927 flood, and the notorious Parchman Prison, at least where we are. The towns in the Delta are dying. When you talk to young men, when I was up in New York and I had started a couple of schools, one of the words that was used, one of the terms that was used, we're going to work with our, quote, scholars. I was put on notice by one of my students in my high school. He says, "Why are you calling me a scholar? I don't want to be a scholar." He says, "That's for you." And I had to listen and I had to take that back. And what I realized down where I am now in the Mississippi Delta, having been down there a year, and it's a problem throughout the United States. While the work of the head is rewarded and is part of the meritocracy, the work of the heart and the hands is denigrated and put down and not recognized. And so some of the things that we're trying to do is bring back the African American quilting tradition down there, and we're creating a network of micro schools where creating those quilts, and I started to learn to quilt myself. I'm not great, but I'm getting there. Is going to be part of the curriculum for boys and girls.
I like that.
We're also, the town where I am is known as the birthplace of the blues. We have people who teach that music to the young people in that community. We're on the civil rights trail. The town where I am is the place where Emmett Till's body was prepared for transport back to Chicago. I live in the adjoining county where Fannie Lou Hamer was raised, right? I'm living history every day there. These kids have forgotten it, or they've been told it's not important. One of the first things I did, and Alicia was with me on that, is we took the kids on the Mississippi River canoeing. Yes. And my son, who's graduating from University of Virginia, he says, can I tell you something? He says, you don't take black kids on the Mississippi River. Nothing good's gonna come from it. But the funny thing was, I had 3 people in Tutwiler tell me the same thing, and they wouldn't let their kids go. But for the 15 families that did, it was transformational. Yes. Because that river, it speaks of freedom, it speaks of travail, it speaks of enslavement, yes. And these kids have no clue about the lessons and the histories and the power, right? Right. Growing up, I was really big on what Nassim Taleb calls anti-fragility, right? So that you break on contact with stress, or you bounce back, but I want something better for the kids down there. I want them to come back tougher and better than ever based on that history down there. It's a forgotten area, not just Tutwiler, but the entire Mississippi Delta, and through combining those traditions, as well as things like robotics, responsible agriculture, community gardens, and drone piloting, we're going to combine those kids and combine those things for those kids and finally give them a sense of self-determination and agency that is not present in that community for any of the residents down there.
I like what you're saying, because what you're saying is that you're going to ensure those students are connected to their heritage, their local heritage, the heritage of their race, their color, and the things that have happened in your town hundreds of years ago, 50 years ago, and that's going to create a more present adult and someone that is really engaged in their community. I think that connection to history is so important. And I love the idea of the boys quilting as well, because we sometimes teach men it's not okay to do those things, but that creates a well-rounded individual adult. So I love that.
And when you can get paid $800 for a queen-size quilt, that's why I'm learning.
All right. So economic stability, yes, I love it. Sir, we'd like to move to you next. Anthony.
Keith.
Sorry, Keith, I'm so sorry.
We look alike. He looks fantastic,
yes,
so it's okay to be called Anthony.
And you're with the National Fellowship of Black and Latino Educators.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us what you do. I love it.
We work to identify, increase, retain, and sustain the number of Black and Latino male educators. We do that by getting kids interested in high school and the education profession. So often they think education is not a profession for them. They want to go in and make more money. And my brother Cornell talks about there's maybe not a lot of money in teaching, but there's a boatload of money in education. And so we're getting kids interested in high school, then getting them supporting and teaching programs in college, getting them into the teaching profession, and then accelerating them through to the C-suite. So often we stop just at the teaching world, but if we really want to make this a sustainable profession, we got to show them the end game, and that's what we do.
And I think you mentioned that you're focused on the leadership aspect of education. So more Black principals, more Black superintendents, and ensuring that students say, if I see you in the building, I can relate to that more, and
Absolutely.
that connects. And you also talked about emotional intelligence being a component of your program. I think that's brilliant, because we're lacking that. Our young men are lacking that emotional intelligence. Tell us what that is and what that's doing for young men.
Yeah, I think 2 things. On the first point around, Maslow's hierarchy of needs says that you have physical safety and psychological safety. Everybody in this room has some affinity group that they need. And so what we work with our guys and our kids on is the idea that, representation matters for kids, and it also matters for adults. Yeah. On our emotional intelligence, we all focus on social emotional learning with our kids, SEL. And so we see emotional intelligence as SEL for adults. There's nothing worse, there's kids who throw tantrums and those things, but it's like, that's appropriate. There's nothing worse than an adult throwing a temper tantrum in passive-aggressive ways and not saying things. So we work on our guys developing their self-awareness, their self-management, social awareness, and relationship management skills grounded in their identity.
I like that. That's really great. Thank you so much. Last, we'll move on to Kyle, who is the founder of Detroit Achievement Academy. And I love your story because you talked about how you had some resistance with the building you needed from the public school. And I'd love for you to just quickly tell us about that and what you all do.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and executive director of Detroit Achievement Academy and Detroit Prep, two free public charter schools in Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, when we were seeking to purchase a permanent school building for Detroit Prep, we bought it. It had been abandoned for 10 years. The neighborhood reported all sorts of just horrible crime. They reported their just personal lives changing because this 50,000 square foot building was empty. We tried to buy it. There was a deed restriction on it, as you mentioned. So I went to the public schools as the founder of a 40-kid school and said, oh my gosh, actually there's a law on the books that says that you can't prohibit schools from using this as a school building. Could you remove it? And they said, no. And I said, oh my gosh, but it's against the law. I'll sue you. And they said, sue us then. And I was like, okay. So we filed suit, and they told us in meetings, we have $70 million in the bank. We can afford to wait. Can you? And in my head, I was like, no. But out loud, I was like, yeah. And so immediately, went to Lansing and said, didn't you mean to prohibit just this sort of bullying behavior? And Lansing said, yeah. And so then I worked tirelessly to write and lobby for. I met with every single lawmaker, Republican and Democrat, in Lansing, and explained just the impact of what was happening. And I think Chris, last year's finalist, said, I think ultimately everybody wants what's best for kids, and I just held on to that as the fundamental truth. And at the end, it was pretty funny. The public schools said, we just didn't think this particular neighborhood had anybody insane enough to just continue to run through walls for them. And so that, I hope they put that on my headstone.
But you're permissionless in your efforts, and it paid off, and I just really admire that approach. What do you all do to reach your young men, your young male students? What are you guys specifically doing?
Oh my gosh, so much. I think waking up every day and remembering what I know to be true in my bones, which is that so much of society, and specifically the traditional school system, is designed to harm and not set male students of color up for success. And just knowing that in my bones, right? And then what sort of things can we put in place to immunize against that? Things we do have in place are a huge proportionate number of leaders of color, because my belief is that folks who have commonalities with the students they're serving can best inform policies and protocols and things that are designed for our students. Having student-developed, family-developed norms and rules and protocols and systems to just, again, continue to immunize against the, ever-present cancer that is bias.
So I read with one of you guys' post that by 2024, most public schools will be filled with mostly children that are Black and brown. How do we train parents? How do we shift this notion that you have to be a part of the public school to be successful? How do we encourage parents and even male role models that it's okay to step outside of that traditional system? Is that a mindset that's just kind of been embedded with it? What do we do to kind of fix that? Do you guys have any tips or suggestions? We only have a few minutes left.
I just think that families have been generationally underserved as students over and over and over again. And so for us to start to change the mindsets about school and whether school is serving our students, whether school is serving our families, it takes full wraparound services.
Yes.
We know that it's not just a inspired student, it's not just a great teacher, it's not just a great school. You need all three of these things and much, much more to really help a student succeed. And so we're really thinking about ways that we can bring in whole families to be able to get the empowerment that they need or empower themselves to make change.
Yeah, and I was going to add to that, we also have to make it cool for men, like the work my brothers are doing here, to know that education is a cool profession.
Exactly.
And you have to know you can be yourself in your own skin in those spaces as well. So through the music, through the culture, through the arts, you have to intertwine it all to create the entire young man. And so that's what we have the capability of doing at our school as well.
I love that. I think that you have to be able to connect to every student first, and you have to be able to connect to Black students first, to boys first. Whatever their demographic looks like, you have to connect before you can educate. So Hans, what do you have to add in closing?
We live in a 98% African American town, right? And the adjoining town, you have to spend FaceTime with those kids. That's what I've done through my 30 plus years career. You've got to be in front of them.
Right.
I go to the Glendora, which has an 86% persistent poverty rate, right? And you go there, you talk with those boys, let them know college may not be your avenue, but what do you want to do? You have to have those kinds of conversations. If you talk to them respectfully, if you let them know, look, I'm no better than you, and we're not going to use the term scholar. We're going to honor your heart and your hands and the work that maybe your father did in the fields or as a long-distance truck driver. We can have those conversations, and they respect that, and plus it doesn't hurt that I can still do 15 pull-ups at a time, right?
Right.
So,
I love it. So in closing, I would just like to say that I am so grateful to the Yazzes and to Jeannie for you guys recognizing that there is a very major concern with our males in America, and thank you for recognizing so many leaders this year so we can help kind of bridge this gap and this barrier that we have among our young men. So thank you all so much. And thank you guys. Good job.
Please welcome to the stage the moderator for our fourth panel, Corey Steiner, Superintendent of Northern Cass School District.
Good afternoon, everyone. To everyone watching, everybody that could join us in person. Let me first say congratulations to all of you for being a semifinalist for a prize that finally is celebrating what's the most noble occupation there is, and that's educating our youth and educating those for the future. I also want to say thank you for choosing greatness. Sometimes we think greatness is somebody who's born, or it's somebody who's on TV, or it's the athlete, but ultimately it's a choice we make every day. And when you made a choice to try to change the trajectory of the world through our youth, you chose greatness. And so I'm just very humbled to be able to sit here and have a conversation with people that made that choice. As we get into our first question, what I want you to think about, and I'm going to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about your organization, especially for people out there that may not know, is there is this desire for something that looks different out there. COVID certainly pushed that forward, but it's always been there. Micro schools, learning pods. And as that desire and demand gets to be more and more, how do you make sure you still personalize the learning experience for those kids you have in front of you so it doesn't become a factory model that we're trying to get rid of in this country? So Jason Bransford, CEO, GEM Innovation Schools, blended model of learning. Love your focus on competencies, success in college, and I love the term learning societies that you use in your organization. Tell us about you.
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, as the pandemic was raging, as we looked across the country, we found that there was a growing number of micro schools around the country. And one of the things that we wrestled with, we operate a charter management organization across the state of Idaho, and we had 7 schools, but those schools were 500-600 students apiece. And we started wondering, is there a way to take the lessons that are being learned in micro schools across the country and combine that with some of the concepts that have worked really well with our students? For example, one of the concepts that we believe deeply in is this idea of earned autonomy. Some people, it's a version of mastery. And the idea is if the student's doing well and they're showing strong academic growth, can we grant them some flexibility that they're probably not granted in the traditional school system? For example, scheduling flexibility. So we open these learning societies, these micro schools, we open these in smaller communities across our state. And one of the things that people came to us and said was, is there a way that my child could maybe go to school 3 or 4 days a week and not 5 days a week? And we said, this actually may be a good idea, but we believe it's something that should be earned, not something that's universal. And so if a student's doing well academically, making strong progress, we'll work with them on the scheduling flexibility that their family desires. And we think there's a growing number of people. There's a bridge being built right now. And we have focused on the moniker before the word school for so long. We said private school, traditional school, homeschool, whatever. And there's bridges being built right now between those that say families actually aren't so concerned about the moniker before the word school as they are about getting their children the best education that they can possibly get in a way that works well for their family. And so if they can learn from home 1 or 2 or 3 days a week and be highly successful coming to a physical location 1 or 2 or 3 days a week, then we'll work with them on that. So when we first opened these learning societies, students were coming from some schools that had really struggled. None of our students were eligible for earned autonomy day one. Today, a year and a half later, 1/3 of our students have earned the autonomy and the flexibility to attend school on a schedule that works for them and their family. And so that's some of the ways that we try to work with students individually to make sure that they are getting the help and support they need if they need additional help and support. But if they've earned the additional flexibility, grant them some flexibility and work with them to do something that works really well for their family.
Yeah, I love hearing that, and I hope others out there really heard that, and especially for somebody who's a public school person. Flexibility must be a fundamental building block in our schools, and we have to reimagine where learning can take place. Love that. Josh Herring, tons of different roles. Admin, teacher, currently a dean at the Thales Academy. You guys focus a lot on a classical curriculum. I love the Thales Press. You're actually creating your materials in real time, so it links to what's going on in the world. Tell us about your organization. How do you keep personalizing that experience?
Thank you, Dr. Steiner. That's a great question. So my name is Josh Herring. I'm with Thales Academy. I love my school and always love getting to share that with other people. Thales Academy is a network of private classical schools. When I joined Thales Academy 11 years ago, we had 3 campuses. Today we have 13 campuses and we have 12 more in development. So the question that you're asking is always key for us. How do we continue to grow? How do we help meet the educational needs of families? And yet how do we also recognize that each student is an individual, that each person has unique needs and has great potential that we don't really know the fullness of that potential. So how do we help each child do that? We do that first and foremost by holding every student to high behavior expectations. We have a very clearly written out set of expectations, and then we have a behavior management process that we work with students as we go through. It's one of the things I learned when I got onto the administrative side is that it's on the teacher side, it's very straightforward. You do this, here's the consequence. On the administrator side, if it gets to the principal's office, it then becomes a conversation. What is happening such that you are not being successful here? And there are times when we reach a point where we have to tell families, there's another school in our area that is a better fit for you. But we get to that point after a long series of conversations to try and figure out how can we figure out how to make this successful. The other piece that we do is really, and this gets to the part of the classical approach of our curriculum. We believe that there are parts of the academics that every student needs to understand, and we want every student to really grow to the best of his or her ability. And we recognize that certain students are going to have great aptitude in math and science and literature and history and languages. We want to help those students go as far as their natural gifts will take them. But we also recognize that every student needs a basic foundation, that all of these kinds of knowledge are necessary for success. A third piece that we really focus on is really the moral character. We believe that every student needs to learn to live a life of strong work ethic, of integrity, of honesty, of learning the habits that lead to long-term success in community. So we focus on all of that within our classrooms, on our teams, and our clubs, really to build a culture where every student can see his or her route to success. So we're a big school, we're a big network of schools, and yet we have at our core a recognition that every person is a priceless, unrepeatable person. And we need to help each person develop all of the potential within him or herself.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you're taking into account what's the contributing impact our learners will have on our community. Again, another core principle we need to bring back into our schools. So thank you so much. Dominique, founder and head of schools, Barbarella Learning Academy, a micro school, hands-on, experiential learning, a ton of STEAM, 16 states if I'm correct. Tell us, how do you keep it personalized with the growth and the demand you're seeing?
Well, first I'll add in that we're in 18 states now, which is huge.
All right.
But we personalize learning in various ways. One of the things that I would highlight is our personalized learning plans. There's this big scare in the world that IEPs is a scary thing, even down to parents. We create personalized learning plans for every child because that is a need. No matter if you have a disability or if you're gifted and talented, we want our students to, one, be empowered within themselves. So creating this plan that highlights what you can do, not what you can't do, empowers them to do marvelous things in our classrooms. And then we also use the Woodcock-Johnson and iReady assessments, which is supposed to be the nation's top with personalizing education. So we take that data, we take our observations, and we create these marvelous plans for our students, and we let them go. And in doing that both virtually and in person, we have seen parents get excited about learning. We've seen students get excited about learning because they feel more connected to what they're being taught.
Awesome. So I'm hearing that there are still kids that get excited about learning and families that get excited about learning. I love the fact that that's what it should be. It's that way when they're younger. We can keep that and maintain that. So thank you. Ayanna Verdi, co-founder and executive director of Verdi Eco School. Love the 12 big ideas and the competencies. That is brilliant. Love that part. Place-based, mixed age, and you have a huge piece on reflection and self-assessment in there. How do you keep personalizing and do all the things you're trying to do?
Yes, thank you for that introduction. Ayanna Verdi, founder of Verdi Eco School, the first place and project-based urban farm school in the southeastern United States. Our students use the community as a campus to acknowledge that learning doesn't just happen inside of a classroom, within the four walls. We're making connections everywhere all the time. I'm learning now. And so we're instilling that value in our students as well. Reflection is a really, really big part of learning. The time that we took as founders, as leaders, to step back and say, oh my goodness, have you met some of the people in this room? That reflection enriches each of us, and we want that practice to be instilled in our students. Our students are proposing businesses. Our students are working with advisors based on their passions and interests, not ours, because we want our kids to be excited. We want them to be joyful learners, walking into school each day saying, I can do this. Someone's listening to me. And maybe my teacher, my educator, my parent will listen to me when I say, I've got this really great idea for something new. We follow our kids. And every personalized trajectory says a really, really important part is to stop and say, what did you learn? Did you fail? What can you use from that failure to inform the next success? And then we follow them, and we see where they go.
Awesome. I love it. Failure is opportunity, and that needs to be built into our learners. Just wonderful. Jim Donahue, CEO of Old Sturbridge Academy, co-located in a museum, experiential learning, using that rich history of your state, farms, gardens, kilns, nature trails. I want to go back to school. I want to be in that school. So how do you keep personalizing in the model that you have?
No, it's a great question, Corey. And so again, I am Jim Donahue, and I'm the CEO of Old Sturbridge Academy, but I'm also the CEO of Old Sturbridge Village, the museum where the academy is located. So at Old Sturbridge Academy, we focus on really three dimensions of personalization that we think are important. The first is experiential education. So we want to be able to provide lots of experiences for our students inside the museum. Museums that are done well, and I like to think we do it well, are deeply personal experiences for our visitors, right? We are the collectors of the objects and the stories that define our civilization, right? And so we want people to be connecting to those objects and to those stories and relating them to their lives today. And so at the Academy, a key part of our program is a program called Learning Through Experience and Learning Through Project, where students are working in the museum every day as part of their curriculum. So that's the first piece of the personalization. We can see what their interests are, expose them to things they might not be exposed of in a traditional school, and then build academic programming around those interests and passions. The second really important piece of personalization for us, and something I really believe in, is exposure to experts. So our students are surrounded by professionals who work in fields that they love and in which they're highly skilled. Whether they're potters working at the kiln, or blacksmiths, or carpenters, or people working in our marketing department, and each of these individuals is providing structured programming for students. So students have an opportunity to work not only with a dedicated teaching staff, but also with experts in the museum. And the last piece I think that's really important for us, Corey, is choice. So as students go through the program, and we're a small kindergarten through 8th grade public charter school, 360 students, we try to give students choice based on what they've already been exposed to at the museum, and we try to give them opportunities to work in smaller groups, in deeper projects with an expert who hopefully will become a mentor. And so those are really the three dimensions of our program that I think lead to the most personalization.
Yeah, I love the idea that kids can make choices. They really can. Our job is to help them understand when their choices are hurting or helping them learning, so I love that. Dominique, next question, I'm going to start with you, is for the people out there watching, let's say they wanted to connect. It's a tough question, but what is the one thing you would say, in our model, this is what every model needs to do? What's the one thing that you kind of hang your hat on that should be in any school, any learning model that's out there?
I would say talk with kids, not at kids. And that is the key to any successful classroom. We spend a lot of time in front of kids telling them things, not monitoring how they retain it, how they use it, or how they apply it inside and outside of the classroom. So in micro schools, we get to guide learning, we get to coach kids. Small group instruction happens in most schools, that's what they say, right? So use that ability to talk with kids, learn with kids, collaborate with kids, and watch what happens.
I love that. The biggest issue we have, I think, in a lot of organizations is we talk to kids, but we don't do anything with what they tell us. We need to start doing something with that information. How about from your side, Josh? What is the one thing you would take?
Sure. I'm going to cheat just a little bit, and I'm going to mention two things. The piece that is the case across every Thales Academy that I think is really could be shared with really everybody is really have your core set of values worked out as a school such that those are present in every classroom. For us, we call those the Thales outcomes. They're a set of 15 principles that are worked into everything we do. The first one is unfailing integrity, because we want all of our students, no matter where life takes them, they need to be people of unfailing integrity. That for us is the definition of success. Second thing, just on a sort of our secret sauce that we don't think is terribly secret, we want to give this away to as many schools as possible, is that we found that if we have the right people in administrative leadership, we can have a school of between 400 and 700 students with only 3 people on administration, which means there's an enormous amount of organizational and cost savings that can be spread out to other needs in the school community. So it is entirely possible to run schools with fewer administrative personnel than really most people in the private education space have ever thought possible.
Yeah, that probably hurts my administrator heart a little bit, but it's very true. It's absolutely 100% true. We need people closer to the learners.
And that's with the right people in administrative leadership.
Correct. Jason, how about from you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would advise is that students need to develop certain competencies to accomplish the thing that schools are setting out to accomplish. And so in order to do that, you've really got to wrestle with when will they actually get a chance to practice this competency. So for example, if you think about a traditional high school where students ages 14 to 18 are micromanaged every minute of every day, that does not replicate the real world experience and prepares them for very little that they'll experience after high school. So you've got to start wrestling with how will we help them develop the competencies that will actually help them succeed post-high school. So it might be taking online classes. For example, depending on which report you read and when it was written, somewhere between half and 2/3 of employees around the country today work from home 1 or more days per week. So the ability to access learning and collaboration with people who aren't physically in the same space as you may actually be a really valuable skill. The opportunity to manage their time and decide when they're going to learn, how they're going to learn, where they're going to learn, if they're going to work individually or work with other groups of students are really important skills for them to learn now, not the day they step foot in a college or the day they step foot into a workplace and have to figure out what ways actually lead me to success. And so helping students have a time and space to work on and practice those competencies that are going to lead them to success, I think is a critical component of what we do.
Yeah, and I love the idea of practice those skills. Not redo every math problem, not diagram the sentence. Practice the skills that when they leave our buildings, they will need on day one. Love that. Ayana, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's most important about our model is our recognition of place as the most vital thing in education. So what's unique to my community, what's unique to Melbourne, Florida, is not the same as what's unique to Brooklyn, New York. And we can't teach those groups of students and show up for those families in the exact same way. So we need to acknowledge that schools need to be place-based. And if we're sharing something from a model, from a micro school model, from a small community school model, it's that large schools can collaborate with us. We can be nimble laboratories to show you what we're doing in real time, and you can take it with you and use it Here, we want to share because we're serving the same children in our community. And it only works if we're all collaborating collectively together to say, hey, all of these kids are gonna grow up and be working together. They should probably all know how to do that. They should probably all understand that one size does not fit all in education. It's impossible. Every child is different. So why are we treating them the same? If we could, we would say, look at your micro schools, look at your small schools, look at your leaders who are willing to step outside of the box and try the thing that you would never touch. Because that thing will be the next innovation that saves the lives of your children.
Write it down, nimble laboratories. It's a beautiful statement, a beautiful phrase, nimble laboratories. Jim, a few seconds left, bring us home. What's the thing you would say?
So I would agree with all of my distinguished colleagues on this panel with everything that they said. I would only add, for me personally, I'm on a mission to convince every other museum in New England that I can convince to take down the red velvet rope that stands between most students who are there on a field trip and their collection, and go from field trip to field experience, so that these museums become public locations where our students feel a connection, where our students connect their experience there to their own academic development, where they feel included and where they feel welcome. So if more schools can tear down the walls to some of our museums, I'd be very happy.
Thank you. It is an honor to work with such beautiful and remarkable human beings. So thank you, and give this panel a big round of applause.
Please welcome back to the stage Randall Lane to moderate our next session.
Thanks, everybody. We're in the meat of the lineup. First, a lot of you don't know, we got about 1,000 people watching online right now. So, and also this will all be recorded for posterity. So all these learnings will be there for everybody to. That's the whole point of the Yass Prize and education, right? To make it available to all. The buzzword. I got to see Sam Altman speak yesterday. AI is, of course, what everybody's talking about. I'm sure all of you are dealing with it, thinking about it, how to apply it, how your students might be applying it. And what AI is really, really good at is, of course, taking information and processing it and, thinking like a robot, basically. What's great about humans and why we're always going to come out on top is because we're creative creatures. We're going to do things that you can't, you can train an AI as much as you possibly can, but it's never going to have that human je ne sais quoi. That said, a lot of curriculums, of course, focus on the basics, critical thinking, which is the building block to everything. But then what do you do with that? And how do you problem solve? How do you think creatively? So this is a panel about that, about the other side, where we take people who take the basics, which are vitally important, and then learn some of the intangibles that then unlock how they think and how they take all those great learnings and the great ways to learn and use the entire amount of their brain power. So with that, rather than do kind of the Cliff Notes version, maybe each of you will go from far to near, can kind of introduce yourself and talk about what you're doing in this specific area, which is why you're on this panel. And then I encourage these guys to emulate another great educator, Jerry Springer, at the end of the day, which is, I want to have a robust conversation, and sometimes, we can even agree to disagree sometimes, although we're going to do it nicely. We're not going to throw any chairs. We're going to do it in the spirit of good educators. But that said, I would love everyone to see, hear about each of you, both what you're doing, with a specific eye on creativity and a bit of your journey, and then we'll open it up.
Hi, I'm Judy Jankowski. I'm the head of school at Chesapeake Bay Academy. And CBA is a school that serves kids with learning differences. And so we have kids that are outside the box to begin with. So the only way that we can effectively address them is connecting with them in that way. I think one of the things that resonated with me that Mr. Forbes actually said was, this is about confidence, right? The first thing that we have to do is help kids find their confidence and believe that they can learn. And the way that we do that is we offer them multiple opportunities. I think Dominique spoke to not focusing on what kids can't do, but rather what they can do. So that's first, right? And then we give kids opportunities to express themselves in those ways. So CBA has a makerspace where we have an entrepreneurship curriculum, but literally our kids from grade 1 through 12 engage in that. We have culinary resources that kids can figure out a recipe in math and then go upstairs and cook it, connect the dots to that. Also, clearly our Center for Education, Research, and Technology Innovation is looking at all of these different pieces and evaluating the effectiveness for our kids. What do they care about? And then how do we connect that so that they can be excited about their learning?
Thank you. Thanks, Judy.
I'm Nikki Duslack with Create Conservatory. We are a K-9 private micro school that teaches STEM education through arts integration. And what that basically means for us is, we are educating children out of their creative capacities. We want kids to graduate from high school and become creative, problem-solving humans who can function in career and the workplace, but we've only ever taught them how to memorize information and spit it back out. We haven't actually taught them how to think. And so for us, it's about teaching children through singing and dancing and sculpture and painting and movement and creative methodologies so that children learn how to synthesize and analyze and evaluate as opposed to just spit back information. So for us, that might look like you might be asked the question of, well, as blood flows through your circulatory system, what song might it sing? Right? Can you, one of my favorites, I walked into a kindergarten classroom one day and the kids were just running amok. And I said, what is going on in here? And she said, well, they're walking like the color yellow. And I said, that's absolutely brilliant, man. Have a great day. And so that's, for us, that's how we do it, is how do we get kids to think creatively, which, by the way, I've just got the message that they're all watching. So, hi, lovies.
First of all, I want to thank Jenny and Jeff and the whole staff for having us here. And I can honestly say everybody here is supposed to be here. And I thank God for you. My name is Dr. Morris Brown. We run a school called Savannah Legacy Academy. And that school, it arrived out of an after-school program where we work with adjudicated kids. And we still work with them. The judge would give us 125 from 82 up until now. And we've worked with over 10,000 families and students, and God has really blessed us. And we had so much success with that after-school program, in which we're still having success with it right now, until we started Savannah Legacy School. And the reason we started that school is because our main focus was golf. Golf has so much to teach anybody that's willing to settle down and just learn the game. It teaches you how to concentrate. It teaches you how to have confidence. It teaches you how to really just focus on patience and those things. Ben Hogan say that your next shot is the most important shot, and he's right. Your next problem, your next problem, your next thing that you're trying to solve, no matter if you made a mistake, your next decision, that is the best decision you'll make. And I thank God that we can take these kids to the golf course where they learn how to have confidence, they learn how to concentrate, they learn how to have patience, and they carry that from the golf course, they carry that right into the classroom, like I did when they told my mom, look here, you might as well take this some boy out of the second grade and get him a job somewhere, because he's not gonna make it. But they was all wrong. And golf, whoever that young man took me to the golf course, it changed my whole life. And that's what we're doing with the golf. And Steve
Dr.
said
Brown,
earlier,
you were a professional, right?
Yes, I am. But ain't
so
too
change
much,
your life in a true way.
Ain't too much profession left in this body now. but I still can hit the ball a little farther. My daughter, she outdrives me 150 yards since you brought it up. But anyway, we take these kids to the golf course, and like Steve saying, you learn just as much outside the classroom as you do in the classroom. And by me going to the golf course and taking these adjudicated kids to the golf course with so much success, they learn how to read out there, they learn how to write, and you have to learn how to keep scores. And they learn how to do math. And we had so much success, so we carry that right into our Savannah Legacy Academy. And basically, that's what we're doing right now with these young kids.
Hi there, I'm Aaron Black, Superintendent of Randolph Eastern School Corporation. There's not a lot of us in the room. I think that's been well documented as far as public school folks in here, and I absolutely love that. But to the question, I think, first of all, at Randolph Eastern, we're in a relentless pursuit to create a college and career academy that personalizes education for every student. And on the technology side, I think leaning into AI and allowing AI, time is our most valuable asset, right? We're busy people, our kids are busy. Well, why don't we let AI do some of that minuscule stuff and help us personalize the experience on the backside so our educators can concentrate on relationships and really leaning into helping kids figure out. And on the public education side, I really believe that our role a lot of times is to help kids learn what they don't want to do with their life. So allowing teachers to develop relationships to get to know their kids by freeing their time with the use of technology. And again, plugging them into experiences where they may not like it. And that will help them decide what they want to do with their life.
Garrett, you're last.
Perfect.
The anchor man.
I'm Garrett Smiley, co-founder, CEO of Sora Schools. Our mission is to bring a future-focused, transformational education through the internet. So we are a progressive school, online, middle, and high school, using the scale of the internet to reach the millions of kids who would be better suited in a school like this, but are stuck in the traditional system. My first thought when you asked the question is that I wonder how most people would define the creative. I think if you went out and asked most educators, they would say, like, I don't know, application of the learning. You know, it's like, at some point we lost the plot. That's why we learn, right? We're too focused on the tests, but kids are asking the question. They're asking, when am I ever gonna need to know this, right? But I don't think we take enough time, nor do we have enough respect for the students to take a step back and to convince them, this is why what you're doing is beautiful, important, and worth your time, right? So I think the creative really represents why we're learning in the first place. So if you don't have that at the heart of your education, you really have you really only have one other option. Well, I guess you have two options. You only have one other option if you don't do that. And that's to threaten kids, to make the stakes such that, I'm slowly rotating, to make the stakes such that they would be crazy not to pay attention to the consequences, right? That's the default mode of much of the education today. But the only other viable option is to use this so-called creative to show them why they're learning and to inspire them and make them want to do it, right? So anyway, that was my first thought when you brought it up.
Love it. Listen, the students, obviously the students are saying, why do we want to do this? But I bet the bigger hurdle is kind of getting the systems, whatever they are, who are just like, where are you on the test? Where are you on the rank, to think outside the box? How do you guys fight kind of the entrenched idea that it's one size fits all and we're all have to hit these marks? How do you overcome that?
Well, if I may, serving a population of kids who are all over the map, right? Kids with learning differences. And I don't like the language of disability, right? This is about our kids can do lots of things really well. What are we going to focus on? What they can't or what they can, and then allowing them to creatively explore what they can do as far as they can go. We need to remediate, but we also need to allow that exploration of what's really important to them. That's how we get them engaged. And I think about, what is it that we're doing with them, right? You brought up the purpose of AI. We need to teach kids bigger thinking, right? We need to teach them how to ask questions, because that's what they're going to need to do in the future. All the skill sets of collaboration, communication, all the big C's, cosmopolitanism, those are the things that are going to drive our kids. Not just, okay, they need to have a job in 5 years, but they also need to have a mindset. They say that our kids are going to be filling jobs that don't exist in this moment. How are we preparing them to do that?
Right, that is so. Go.
And also, the basic fundamental in school is reading, write, and doing math. And it's the same thing on the golf course. There's 3 big C's: confidence, concentration, and creative thinking. That's where on the golf course and in the classroom, kids has to do creative thinking because it helps them to ask questions why and what and when.
It makes sense, but how do you convince people like that, walking around about the color yellow and they don't look at you and go, you're wasting time.
So I'll jump in it from a public school perspective because
Aaron and then Nikki, go
if
ahead.
anybody's kind of graded or judged in those manners, I think it's your public schools. And I think the way you challenge that is talking to the commerce, right? The Chamber of Commerce, the people that are employing our young people aren't asking about our test scores. They're asking about their communication, their power skills, right? They're not talking. So if you engage those people making decisions on what the people in commerce, the people that make things go in the background, what they want, I think that's how you challenge this whole testing environment that we have.
Nikki, how do you find that?
You also challenge.
Nikki first.
So no, you're okay. So I think for us, part of it is just like Aaron said. I think what our families are interested in are not test scores, and I think that's the first thing. I can't tell you how many times I've been told, we don't want you here. I said, well, I am. So let's talk about that, right? And I think part of it is walking the walk, and part of that is when communities start to see the way that you're changing children's lives and families' lives. That's a huge part of it. And then I think on the back end is also I'm going to follow through with our data, which is going to blow anybody else's data out of the water. And then that's that proof that what I'm doing is working. And part of it is having that boldness, or I'm not sure whether it's boldness or insanity. I've had this conversation yesterday. Yep. Like, I don't know which one I am, but just, going forward, knowing that we are doing what's best for students. And then on the back end of that saying, and here we can prove that what we're doing works because.
So what's the metric that you're showing? What's the ultimate metric that sells this?
So for us, I think when we have students that cry on a weekend because they can't come to school, that's the ultimate metric, right? We had a family that called on a hurricane day.
It's the new cry, don't cry ratio.
Yeah. Kids called on the hurricane day. I had a mom call me and she was like, but really, you could just go down there and unlock the doors, right? Like you could just let him come. And I said, no, not today.
I think there's also a testing question that you could flip, right? I don't know how many of you have ever heard of the Torrance test of creative thinking. And it is a test that is applied lots to gifted kids, but the results of it are fascinating because when kids are 5 years old and they take the Torrance test of creative thinking, they are in the 90th percentile. And when you test them again, when they are in the 12th grade, you go to the gifted range. It's 3% maybe. So what they have concluded, at least the folks who have developed that test, is we are educating the creativity out of our kids. So how do we turn that around? What are we going to do that's different, that builds them instead of tears it down?
Garrett, jump in here.
I was going to say.
You don't have to throw a chair either. So.
People often, to be honest, scoff at those sort of answers in the traditional education realm because they think, sure, kids like summer camp too, right? But it is extremely important that we recognize we are creating this Pavlovian association between learning and fear in a lot of our student population. So having a school environment that is actually enjoyable is really the foundation we don't discuss.
Right. That makes perfect sense. All right, we have a minute left. I would like each of you to, in one sentence, and maybe, we'll just go straight down again. So Judy, you get to go first. In one sentence, what's the takeaway on, collectively you've got, 150 years of experience doing this. For everybody watching this in future years, distill one sentence, what a teacher, let's say a public school teacher in a classroom in Houston, Texas, what can they take out of what you've learned to make their classroom better in terms of melding core and creative? Judy, you go first.
Look at who your children are and honor them.
Nikki?
Yeah, I would say be the kind of person that you would want to be locked in a room with for 8 hours a day if you had to sit in a desk and be quiet.
This abounding, it covers a lot of area, especially concentration, creativity, and just having confidence that you can do whatever is before you. And always remember, like Theodore Roosevelt said, he say, once you believe you can do it, you're halfway there.
I want to jump off what Gary said. It's okay to have fun in school. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's okay to have fun in school.
Yeah, I would say spend more time than you think is even reasonable to convince the kids why the learning matters and why it's important to them.
I'll add one, following up on Dr. Brown. Teddy Roosevelt also said, speak softly and carry a big stick. And the big stick may be his results, and you guys are all doing that. So thank you for sharing that with everybody here and everybody watching. So thank you.
Please welcome to the stage the moderator and distinguished guest for our 6th panel, Ryan Craig, Managing Director at Achieve Partners.
You go ahead over there. Yeah, go on this side. Great. Well, welcome. It's terrific to be here at the Yass Prize. My name is Ryan Craig. I am a managing director at Achieve Partners, a impact investment firm focused particularly on the intersection between education and employment. So we have a workforce fund, essentially, where we're building apprenticeship programs. And I have a new book, which I think is circulating around, called Apprentice Nation, where, and I think I'm going to talk for a few minutes about sort of what the point of the book before we get to the panel. And I don't know whether there are slides or not, but if there are, you can put them up. If not, I will just go ahead. So I don't know if any of you sort of follow popular music. It seems like every summer there's a song of the summer. This summer, the song of the summer was a song by a Virginia singer-songwriter by the name of Oliver Anthony, named Richmond North of Richmond. And it was for the very first time an artist appeared for the first time on the Billboard 100 chart at the top of the chart. And if you're familiar with the song, it's a song basically about how young people only feel like they have bad jobs, dead-end jobs available to them, jobs that are breaking their back, jobs with no career pathway, with no future. Anthony was asked, he's like, is this a conservative liberal thing? Is this a rural urban thing? He's like, no. This is an issue that young people I know are facing. They're not seeing a career pathway. As a country, America has invested a lot in four-year college as the sole pathway, the sole socially acceptable pathway to economic opportunity and socioeconomic mobility. And it worked for a while, but we're seeing over the past 20 years that really breaking down because half of all students who attempt college don't complete college because of the affordability issues that are obvious to everyone here and often on the front page of the newspapers, and increasingly around employment and employability. And that's a big problem because that problem is about to get much worse. And let me tell you why. Digital transformation has already dramatically increased the number of digital skills, platform skills, job knowledge, business knowledge skills that employers are listing in job descriptions they're not finding in your typical student who's progressed from secondary school through to college and done everything they've been told to do and graduate. They're not finding those skills. And those skills are actually harder to learn in a classroom than they are by doing. In addition to that skills gap, we're seeing the emergence of what's being called an experience gap, where good entry-level jobs that college graduates want to get, increasingly are listing 3 months, 6 months, 12 months job experience required, explicitly or implicitly in job descriptions. And AI is about to make that experience gap much worse. Why? Think back to your first good job out of college, your first professional job. Presumably, a sizable portion of your time was spent doing grunt work, menial work, while you kind of learned the ropes and figured out what was going on there. My first job, I was a consultant, and I spent, 30 hours a week developing PowerPoint presentations that I'm pretty sure no one ever looked at. Going forward, no employer is going to want their entry-level analyst or associate to be spending 30 hours a week building PowerPoint presentations. You're going to spend an hour or two a week. AI will do the rest, and the expectation will be that you'll spend the vast majority of your time doing higher value work, client work, product work, business development work, which you will not be able to do without relevant work experience, is the point. Look at what's happened in cybersecurity. A decade ago, someone with a modest technical background could get a college graduate, could get a good entry-level job as a tier 1 analyst in a security operations center. So this is sort of first row of defense. You're looking at the alerts coming in for your client. You're deciding which you can disregard, which you need to resolve, which you need to elevate. Today, thanks to automation, most of that work has gone away. The entry-level jobs in security operations centers are what used to be called Tier 2 analyst jobs, which require a CISSP certification, which asks for 3 to 5 years experience. So we're in for a world of hurt as a country if we don't figure out fast how to do more to integrate real, relevant work and life experience into the current educational pathway that we've developed. Apprenticeship is obviously a great way to do it because an apprenticeship is a full-time job where the skills and experience are being delivered as part and parcel of that job. And the book talks about a plan for doing that in a way that we have not been. We, as a country, have overinvested in what I call a tuition-based, debt-based platform for a career launch and dramatically underinvested in an earn and learn pathway. But with me today on the panel, we have 4 tremendous examples of schools and K-12 entrepreneurs that have bought into that notion, that have bought into the fact that an academic preparation for college only is not enough, and it certainly shouldn't be the only pathway for everyone. So I think we're just going to go down in order here and have each panelist introduce him or herself, starting. Go ahead.
So thank you. My name is Matt Shosi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Be More Colorful. We have a virtual reality and immersive media platform called CareerVXR that we use to film real people performing real work in real environments, bringing those experiences into the classroom to help fill what we call the awareness gap, making sure that every student has a fundamental understanding of all of the potential pathways that can be in front of them.
And I'm Kelby Woodard. I'm the CEO of the Crusader Network of Schools. We have 13,000 kids in 39 schools in 24 states. And what makes us unique is that every one of those kids works in a corporate environment 1 day a week in order to earn their college prep education. We're exclusively for kids that are 250% of the poverty level and below. And the unique thing that you were just talking about, Ryan, is that they're earning that experience as 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old students. And the world of AI is going to impact them dramatically. And in fact, they're bringing what they're learning in AI in their corporate jobs back to academia, back to our curriculum. And when they look at ways that they can engage in AI, it's exciting to them, and it gets them more interested in what they're going to do in the future. So completely agree with that. The only thing that is a little bit different about us as a college prep school is that apprenticeship, if you want to call it that, we call it our work study program, is really about seeing what happens when you do get a college education. What is the world like? What sort of doors are open when you do have that college education? Because they're working with people that have a college education and that they can see those opportunities and actually live them on a daily basis. So, thanks.
Hi, Christine Lorenzi, founder and director of Indie Ed. We are a student-led experiential school in St. Petersburg, Florida. I like to say that we're melding the best of both worlds. So we align our students based on their abilities and their interests first. Our teachers have the autonomy to partner with our families, and at least once a week, our students are getting into the community to apply what they're learning. So we're actually not even waiting until they're 16, 17, or 18. Our 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, all the way starting from kindergarten, are voicing what they're excited about. And we have that space and freedom and autonomy to allow them to follow their passions and their interests, and they're doing those social skills work, which I think is what you're alluding to when you're talking about the experiential gap that we have right now. They're getting out, they're asking questions, they're researching the person who's leading their panel, they're actually getting in these situations themselves, and they're not waiting until they're adults to make those mistakes and lead their journey.
Hi, I'm Mike Felton. I'm the superintendent for St. George Municipal School Unit. St. George is a small fishing community in Mid-Coast, Maine. Shout out to St. George who's listening right now. So we are partnering with a regional technical high school, Mid-Coast School of Technology, to develop the nation's first pre-K through 12 career and technical education program. And for us, career technical education, or CTE, is hands-on, minds-on technical learning that's connected to career and community. We're going to construct a CTE makerspace building that has a shop for boat building, woodworking, and metalwork, and a makerspace with 3D printers, laser cutters, CNC routers, robotics, and sewing machines. And by bringing together the newer technologies with traditional technologies and trades, we think that's where some of the synergy and magic is going to happen. I think one question I get a lot is why elementary schools? And my number one reason is you can't wait. We start losing kids in 3rd through 5th grade. And the quick story that I'll tell that sort of illustrated this for me, and it's sort of been driving me on this project for the past 2+ years and driving our community, is I got a call 4 years ago from a parent, and she says, Mike, I can't get my 5th grader out of bed. I can't get him out. And I looked, and he had a great teacher, small class, 15 kids, pretty innovative curriculum. So I talked to his mother for a while, and she said, Mike, he doesn't enjoy school, but when he comes home, he's working on his snowmobile, on his lawnmower, on his four-wheeler. He's taking the engine apart, he's putting it back together. And we were completely missing that skill in our school. So we connected him with our with our makerspace director. And the first thing he did was he 3D printed the parts for a V8 engine and assembled it. Then the teacher asked him, well, if you could do anything, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to build an automatic cat feeder, which was not what we had anticipated. So he 3D printed the hopper. He programmed a little Arduino chip so when the cat touched a certain point, the door would open and the cat food would come out. Now he finished it. He uses it for himself for Skittles. It never got to the cat. But I talked to his mom at the end of the year, and she said, Mike, I was talking to my older son, his older brother, and she asked him what he wanted to do. He said, well, I want to go to Mid-Coast School of Technology and become a diesel mechanic. And she talked to the 5th grader. She said, what do you want to do? And he paused. He said, I want to be an engineer. And he walked up the stairs. Now, that was a kid who, by the end of 5th grade, would have not liked school, would have not thought highly of himself. We would have battled him every day. And by the end of that year, he wanted to be an engineer. That's the metric we're looking for.
That's fantastic. I mean, just to put a point on why these 4 semifinalists are so important. The landscape of what I would call continuing technical education, CTE, or experiential education in K through 12 is kind of a wasteland, which is to say, as college became the sole pathway to economic opportunity, what was the point of doing sort of career and technical education or career discovery in high school, right? Because what are you asking them to prepare for? They're going to go on to 4-year college anyway. For the most part, that's the only pathway. I'd just like to just go down, starting with Matt. What's your assessment of sort of the landscape of sort of continuing in technical education for the other 99% who aren't benefiting from your programs today?
Well, I think from our standpoint, the landscape is a fundamental lack of awareness, not just on the student side, but on with teachers, with career counselors, being able to understand what these careers actually are and how to align a student's interests with a certain industry or within a certain role within a certain industry. That's something that we think is critically important because we give students advice on what career they might be interested based on surveys and pamphlets and minimal experience or immersion. And then they have to make a decision that impacts them the rest of their lives. And we need to do a better job. There are tools and methods that allow us to avoid that, to create that awareness, to create those experiences.
Yeah, I think in one word, it's access, right? And one of the things that we find when our kids are in these corporate environments, they create their own access, their own connectivity. I was at an event with some of our alums in Dallas on Monday night, and in walks an alum who graduated in 2019, then went on a full ride scholarship to Notre Dame, graduated from Notre Dame, was coming back, already had a position with one of the employers he had worked at before, was talking to the board chair, who also happens to be the managing partner at PwC, and he says, my younger brother is graduating from college next year and wants to be an accountant. And he said, not only do I want to learn who that is, but also the managing partner from Deloitte is walking in the room in a minute, and I want to introduce you to her as well. And that connectivity happens because our students are earning that through access, right? And I recently, as in this morning, read an article from the New York Times that I wish Forbes had written because it would have been better. The title of this article was about cheating, and it buried the headline. The cheating aspect was 60 to 70% of high school students cheat, admit to cheating, and that's been something they've done. That's a pretty consistent number for the last decade that they've done this. The headline, though, that was buried was access to GPT, to ChatGPT. And this number should scare the heck out of all of us. If you live in a family that makes $75,000 or more, 60% of those kids have direct access and have used it within the last 24 hours. If you live in a family making less than $30,000, that number is 24%. So if you don't have access to AI, to ChatGPT, or access to what you can dream to be, it's not just what you see on TV or the heroes you may see in your own neighborhoods. You need to have access to see what else is out there for you. And I think, in one word, it's access.
That's great. Christine?
So I think when we think about what the landscape of education and just jobs will look like for the future, we have to all be really honest and say that we don't know. Things are changing so quickly that what we think our kids will need to be prepared for might not really be it. So the idea of the experience gap also supports something that I think if we were real as adults and having the conversation, most of us have earned our spots. Well, maybe not the people in this room. We've worked our butts off for our spots and have made our own ways. But typically, people gain employment by access to social connections. So there's the opportunity that our kids have by getting into the community and having these connections, like you were saying. We have young people who have already been offered jobs because they can see how they can communicate, they can problem solve, and that doesn't matter what the job looks like in the future. So the idea of just paying attention to where we're at now and what that might look like in the future. We just have to be honest that we don't know, and preparing our kids with skill sets that can be fluid and flexible is also important.
I mean, the first word that comes to my mind is dignity. And I think for a long time we said that unless you went to a four-year college, somehow what you did was less than. And we delivered that message to our nation. I certainly got that message when I was in school. And I think a lot of the fault lines and challenges we're facing as a nation is because that message got infected our public education system. And we pushed out SHOP and we pushed out home ec. Well, now it takes you 2 years to get a contractor to build your house. It takes 3 months to get your car fixed, and good luck ever finding a plumber. Not to mention that we're going to have labor shortages with physicians. We have labor shortages in the technology field. So what we try to really instill in our students is we respect all the pathways. If you want to go on to MIT and get a PhD, God bless you. If you want to come out with a certification from high school and start your own welding business, God bless you. We respect all of that. It's changing. We're seeing the shift, but only a few years ago, we had a high school student, and she wanted to be a nurse, and she wanted to go to the nursing program at our technical high school. And her guidance counselor said, well, you're really in the college track. Don't do that. And she said, you know what? I'm doing it. I don't care. So she went there, and she just graduated from the University of Southern Maine with her nursing degree, and is doing exactly the work that she wants. And the one other story that I think hits home that what we've missed is there was a student who went to Midcoast School of Technology, went into machining, went to a national competition, came in like third or fourth. He got a $100,000 job offer while he was in high school from Boeing. Now that should be on the front page of the newspaper,
right?
And us rethinking how we're approaching public education.
That's great. It reminds me of a piece I wrote last month about a Winchester, Virginia school district where they're foregrounding CTE. They're requiring every student to take a CTE pathway. And there was the valedictorian in the school. She loved welding, and she pursued welding. And that welding made her sufficiently, interesting or different, and she got into an Ivy League school. So there you go. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, I don't know if you're familiar with the work of researcher Richard Reeves, who's talking increasingly about how our current academic pathway is doing a relatively good job serving girls, but not a very good job serving boys. And that boys have fallen behind girls really at every level of our education system. And I want you to maybe talk about why your company, your program is particularly important for boys, to provide opportunity for boys in terms of the experiential learning, the work-based learning.
Sure. I think for us, by creating experiences that allow students, boys, girls, everyone to get into the heart of the action and observe the career, it helps answer that question of why do I need to know this? Being able to be on top of the structural steel on a high-rise that's being constructed. Well, it's pretty important to know geometry if you're going to be someone assembling a structural steel as an iron worker, and really creating relevance for why they're learning that information is one of the most critical things. And that relevance comes from seeing what are the actual industries, what's the actual work that I would be performing, so that I have a goal, I have a mission, I have a reason for why I need to learn these things that in the use case that you're providing me don't make any sense. But if you can associate it with a career or an industry that I've shown an interest in, then I'm going to be motivated.
So important for completion and achievement.
Well said, Matthew. And what I would say is that an amazing thing happens when you send kids to work, right? Especially in the environments our kids are working in. A lot of times our boys are not motivated by academics because they haven't had a great academic experience up until they come to Cristo Rey. And when they do come and they end up in a workforce, they see something else they can be good at. And that's motivating for them to be able to come back into the academic world and say, you got to be good at academics if you want to do that. And it's a little bit like other co-curriculars, like playing football. For us, instead of playing football, it's work study.
That's great.
As the only female on a panel that's not your father's shop class, I feel it has to be said that it's not necessarily just a boy thing. Gender is irrelevant when it comes to providing relevancy to what you are doing to young people. So male, female, non-binary, whatever label you want to put on it, our kids just need to be inspired to learn and to be motivated, and meeting them where they are, seeing them as real people and giving them real relevant work tasks to accomplish is how you do that.
Yeah, I want to echo what you're saying, Christine. I think when you allow children to build and create with their hands and their minds, they light up. Our fourth grade teacher, Jamie McCaffrey, said that, and I think that sums up all I'm trying to say. And that's not just a male, female. It's not just a kid thing. It is a human thing. It's what we're, I think, made to do. It's where we all light up when we build and create. So by bringing that into the curriculum and just into the culture, and recognize that and providing students that opportunity, they re-engage in their learning. And some students, when they disengage, they disrupt an entire classroom. Other students, they disengage, you don't know it as well because they draw within. And so we got to be careful that we see the ones that are maybe acting out, but not the ones that are withdrawing in. By re-engaging them all students are going to benefit.
Well, I want to congratulate Mike, Matt, Kelby, and Christine on being leaders in this much-needed CTE experiential education revolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage the moderator for our 7th and final panel, Jeannie Allen, Yass Foundation Director and founder and CEO of the Center for Education Reform.
Is that not working? Okay, thank you so much. Our 7th and final panel. Go ahead and have a seat, gentlemen. No, I'm right there. I'm going to sit down. If you can, do we have enough? Yep, we're good. Thank you, everyone who's watching from their offices, on their computers, and at home. We've had over 1,000 people tuning in, which is great because I think we could all agree that this has been some of the most significant matter, if you will, in science language, content that any of us have really heard in a long time. So please give yourselves a round of applause again. Our semifinalists and the information discussion. Thank you again to our friend Ryan Craig. There is a book, Apprentice Nation, for all of our semis. As you leave today, I just want to make a comment before we get to the last panel, one of my favorite subjects about why we stop for education, that the issue, as you all talked about before, and as I know so many in this room understand and practice every day, it shouldn't about either or, college or career. It should be about higher education and defining higher education in any way that gets a student, an individual, an adult to the pathway that's going to be valuable, make them productive and happy citizens, which is why we stop for education. So, my final panel, I'm so happy to have you guys up here. I'm just going to throw out some questions and let's have a conversation about what it means. You know, when Janine and I first started working together on what was originally the STOP Foundation and later become the Yass Prize, but we still have the STOP Awards Initiative, and many of you will be getting your second level of Yass Prize and STOP Awards tonight. The issue was we came up with these 4 words. We just kept coming up with them. What is it that we want to do? Well, education has to be sustainable, meaning it can survive past somebody handing you a check that is not the public. It should be publicly supported. It should be transformational. So many people are doing such good work, but how many of us, even those of us who innovate today, are taking it to the next level tomorrow? Outstanding by whatever measure matters. You just talked a lot about that in the prior panels about how you actually measure success. And finally, as we've all been hearing today, one of our favorite words, permissionless. That you don't have to ask people for permission, and if you do, there's something really wrong with the law and you have to change it, right? So I've already given away the punchline, but I'm going to start with Heidi True of West Virginia Academy. Heidi, which one of those is your favorite and why?
I'd have to say, let's see if this is on. All right, can you hear me better? There we go. I'd have to say permissionless. Being from West Virginia, it is a state that is notoriously stagnant. And I think the only way that we can change education for these kids is to take that effort, right? To change something, to do something permissionless, because they haven't done it for a very long time. And I think in all of our realms, in all of our areas, there is that chance that you have to take to reach those children that haven't been reached for a very long time.
And Pastor Josh Robertson from the amazing Black Pastors Forum in Rock Creek Church, what's your favorite and why? And it's okay if you repeat.
Sure. I think my favorite is sustainable, because I think with all of the creative genius that we have and the courage that we have to innovate and our collaborative efforts, how can we sustain that? How can we make sure that our children and our children's children have access to education? So I think finding ways and business models that can withstand the test of times, but then also being very intentional about advocating and making sure that we have educational freedom, that our laws reflect the values of education freedom and opportunity is vitally important. So I would say sustainability.
All right, so from West Virginia to Pennsylvania to Wisconsin, Sean Luring Lumen, tell us about your favorite.
Transformational for sure. I think you can be outstanding and not necessarily transformational, because we're talking about individual children and transforming for individuals. And as an organization, I think that also means not missing the forest for the trees. And I think we do that in education sometimes. And one of the forests that our kids need to be is meaningful, decent work. We need to get them to that as piece of it. So we're working on transforming our education to ensure that every child at the end has meaningful and decent work pathways.
Incredible. And Elias Pappas, Odyssey Charter School, Delaware. We didn't actually plan that this is going to be 5 different states, but it was. You guys decided to be on this panel. Tell us about your favorite.
Jeannie, I think a lot has to do with the way the 4 principles intertwine with each other. So instead of picking one, I'd rather say it's how we stop altogether. Because absolutely we need to be sustainable. Absolutely, we need to be transformational and outstanding and permissionless, but it's really, how do we really think about how we intertwine all of those values in such a way that all kids can find a successful pathway in our future, right? At Odyssey Charter School, the only Greek school amongst you all, right? We're very proud to be able to take that and really harness all those pieces of it in order to create that sustainability that we talked about. To create a permissionless forum, we're a tuitionless school, right? And that is a very important piece, because we can touch a lot more kids that way, and it becomes accessible to a lot more people. Of course, outstanding, and I resonated with so many people because there's so many ways to define outstanding. But one of the things that we want to do is we want to empower our kids in such ways that they would be able to work from within the system and supersede the system. So what I mean by that is, well, right now we have test scores that we have to deal with, so certainly we need to prepare our kids to be able to show, at least in that forum, so that we can continue to advocate for them while we're continuing to innovate as a group over here together, right? And then thinking through, well, how do we make the financing work? A lot of us that are charter schools out here know very well that we are behind the gun because we don't get facilities funding. And at Odyssey Charter School, that means there's $3 million a year that we have to come up with on top of what other education systems have to come up with, which comes at quite a cost. And we've done it through our own innovations. We talk about bus transportation at Odyssey Charter School, which we have done it in an enterprise way, which allows us to get some of that money back and recover it. But really what I love about what I hear over here with everybody is that through these systems and through this innovation together, now we are a movement. And now we have a voice together. And now I have all of these friends in here that we can use to really shake up the system once and for all and help liberate education for our students.
We will definitely be counting on that. Thank you, Elias. Finally, last but not least, Mike Piskel, College Achievement Prep in New Jersey.
Yes, thank you. My favorite would be, I think it's necessary. Without this innovation, none of our work would be possible. And I think so often we get so into the work and finding best practices, but it's permissionless. If the revolution is parents choosing which school they send their child to, that is the revolution, because that is bringing the market economy to public education. And public education in so many cities is utterly failing. When you have single-digit college graduation rates from our major cities, in most areas of our major cities, that is a failed society. And so giving the parents the power of choice is creating the market economy. That's the only way this is going to work. And we got to remember that work. And if we're not getting our parents into that fight, we're never going to, the revolution will fail. You know, and that's my, I don't know, it's my favorite, but it's the most necessary to our work.
Well, and you just touched on, as many of you did, on this notion of equitable treatment. I don't want to say equity, it means too many different things to too many people, but equitable treatment, being treated equally among your peers. So, Sean, let me start with you in the middle, because the very fundamental structures, like each of you, charter, private, micro/charter, private, all of them depend on someone funding education, which is, I thought, a public good. But Sean, there's a group of people challenging the money that actually pays for your students to go to school in Wisconsin. So let's, in our few minutes and our final panel, let's let people out there know and understand what it is that you're up against in each of your states.
Yeah, in medicine they have, you know, the Hippocratic Oath, or so, I don't know it exactly, except do
I
no
can
harm,
verify
right?
that from Greek
yeah,
lens, yes.
Yeah, okay, do no harm. In education, we have the exact opposite, where adults harm kids every single day of the year. And in Wisconsin, that's happening right now. There's literally an organization that wants to say to our kids, you are now expelled from those schools and you have to go to ones that you don't choose. Can you imagine a society where that is acceptable? That's Wisconsin right now. There's a group that's challenging a 30-year-old voucher program where parents get to literally choose the school, private, charter, district. They get to choose the school and the money follows them. It's one of the oldest established in the entire country, and this group is working really hard to try to take that away by superseding most of the court system and going directly, it's a political move, directly to the state Supreme Court. So that is being looked at right now.
And Josh, you've always been a fan of good schools, whether they're public, private, charter, and you started your learning centers to help stem the tide of failure in the local schools for the students in Harrisburg. But you don't get the additional funding that students get, and I think there's also a school choice program pending in Pennsylvania. What are you up against? Why isn't that passing?
Sure. Sadly, last Sunday we had a town hall meeting where we had a senator and a state representative present there, and they both agreed that they should be passing the Lifeline Scholarship and the PASS program, and that the sole reason for them not passing that was because the Senate and the House, it was political. And that's what we're up against, right? That's a real and significant battle that we have to face. But I think how we face it is, I think most parents don't know the options that are available to them. And so I think that there has to be a national movement of educating and advocacy where our parents can be informed as to the laws that govern education, and then their voices empowered, and thereby being able to garner their votes. Because ultimately, we need to vote our way to educational freedom. And I think we do it through the parents. Why I am uniquely, I think, positioned amongst us to serve is because in every single city that we represent, there's a cluster of churches there that our parents go to that have, and that's how we get to critical mass. I think, how can we get to critical mass as far as voices and votes, I think is how we challenge the current apparatus that keeps education, I think, limited. And if I can say one more thing, it just shocks me that in this country that was built off of courage, creativity, and a collaborative spirit, that we don't use those three virtues to create equity amongst equals. And I think us as education providers and people, we gotta fight. We gotta fight for the voices and the votes that can secure our future together.
Well said. Elias, you did something really incredibly innovative. I mean, you decided to run your own bus company and also contract out with other districts to be able to subsidize what you do. But should we have to make a school do that?
Well, one of the ways that we can help in the future is obviously by showing individuals that we're responsible with our money. And we take that seriously, and especially what I appreciate so much about the Yass Prize and the foundation and all of the people that are in this room is that we put our money where our mouth is, and we respect the money that comes to us in such a way that we can get the most outcomes for our kids, and that's what we're hearing in this room today. Should we have to do it? Absolutely not. All students should be able to have a right to a free and public education in this country, and all students have a right to a high quality education in this country. It's shameful that we are in a position where we have to come up with this level of ingenuity and innovation for us to push forward. It isn't to say that we don't have the people in the room to be able to do it, but it's just a darn shame that we're like that, and it's a darn shame that our political systems at the local level, might I add, because that is where it is the most corrupt, are not allowing for us to be able to move initiatives forward and allow for parents to have that final choice of what is best for their children in their education. And that, to me, is why we have institutions like the ones we have over here, where we teach civics engagement immediately from a young age, so all our students understand, oh, you absolutely can see the generational change that you're looking for, because we're going to uplift you and we're going to teach you how to go advocate, and then we can uplift these communities once and for all.
You know, everyone in this room and so many, and our 64 quarterfinalists prior and past cohorts, and so many people that even didn't make it to that level, have come to this with so many different backgrounds and sectors, and they've left other jobs to go into education. They've developed their own programs and innovations, and they've all come up against this, again, no matter what area they're coming from. Mike, I was very happy that consistently your organization was judged high, so I didn't have to recuse myself from final judging, because I've known you for about 25 years. And when I met you, you were running around LA trying to get people to understand why the students in South Central LA should have an option to go to your original schools. And then you came east and went to your home state, if you will, to open something up. What's the change you've seen over time, in a couple of minutes, that you think is better, and what's not better?
I think, you know, I've learned a lot and from my experiences and what to spend less time on and what's more critically important. I do think there's, I think, again, reaching the parents and motivating the parents, if they don't know they have this ability and this freedom, they can't escape their local public school. And that, I thought that was electric in LA, and it's not as electric in New Jersey. The parents don't realize that they have a choice, and the choice will be transformational. What their kids, we're trying to create a school that I think all of you wish you went to one of my schools. You get to go to college for 2 weeks in the summer, whether it be at Princeton or Europe, and you get to look at the world at a different place. We have a lot of kids that live in public housing, and for them to go and live on Princeton's campus for 2 weeks in the dorm and be taught by Princeton professors, they come back, and then our teachers love teaching there because the kids are now so incredibly motivated. You don't have to become this psychological genius to teach at our schools to motivate the kids. So we've set up these systems and programs that unlock that, and I think I've learned so much more about the social capital part of how to inspire our kids. And now I got to figure out how to inspire the parents for the revolution.
For the revolution. So Heidi, speaking of revolutions, bring us home, help us close out. How do we encourage, motivate, and adopt this notion of everyone, every policymaker should stop for education?
I think the biggest thing is putting your voice out there, being heard. Telling your story again and again. The one thing that I've noticed is a lot of people, when I say I'm from West Virginia, they think I'm from Western Virginia. There are states and areas like the Delta, things like that, that are not being seen. And I think getting the voice out there and being able to lift back that curtain and say, all right, what's going on back there? What's going on in educational systems? I think we have been eye-opened and shocked when we actually look at the bureaucratic nation, the bureaucracy that they've created in districts and in high-level educational spaces, and getting the word out to the legislators and saying, this is what's going on, did you realize this? And a lot of them have no idea. And so that's what's the key to it, is getting the word out and spreading as much as you can. I think that's the biggest.
So we've heard from 33 people today, and that if you hadn't watched the whole thing, we would urge you to go back and watch it. It is truly extraordinary to hear the views and the passion and dedication of all of you and what you've learned. So many of you out there thought you just sort of start something and get stuff done and you'd be fine. You could go back to, I don't know, shopping for Christmas on time. And no, it doesn't happen, right? Or Hanukkah, or whatever. And so we are so grateful that you're in this room. Hopefully this has given everybody a little bird's eye view into what real revolutionary, sustainable, transformational, outstanding, permissionless education is and why it's so critical. And in just a few short hours, you all will be joining us to celebrate you and to talk about the next level and the next steps and the next ascent into the Yass Prize movement and community. So thank you for being part of the Yass Prize movement. Thank you for putting yourself out there. Thank you, those of you watching it. Please follow on Twitter tonight, starting around 8:45 for big announcements. And until then, we will see you around. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.